Greetings, brothers and sisters. I'm Professor Spira, and welcome to the 10th Q&A session that we've done here on Mucus-free Life LLC since we've gotten things going. And for those of you that don't know, I'm Professor Spira and practiced the Mucusless Diet Healing System for upwards of 13 years, and was introduced to it by a wonderful gentleman named Brother Air, who himself had practiced the diet at that time for almost 30 years, and now he's almost practiced it over 40 years. And I had the privilege of learning about the diet within the context of a small yet dedicated community of Mucusless Diet Healing System practitioners. And for me, that made all the difference in the world, because I was able to have a significant amount of support in the tender times. There's when you first getting into the diet in the early stages, it's very nice to have a helping hand and to have some supporters and people to have your back, because there are so many upheavals that can occur in your life, and there's so much, so many changes. And as someone that goes on this path, you have to really have a pioneering spirit. You have to be somebody that is willing to, you almost have to be willing to literally be born again. That concept is thrown around a lot, the born again and this, that whole kind of, rebirth and all this. But the Mucusless Diet Healing System offers a distinctive opportunity to actually do that for real. It's not just a concept. You will change fundamentally, and a lot of people aren't ready for that kind of change. They're not ready to become a different person or a better person, or to grow in, however you conceptualize that, to grow into something that is beyond where you're at. You have to be ready to let go of addictions, mental addictions, things you didn't even know you were addicted to, certain social situations. And like I say, that's, to me, that's the number one reason people fail practicing the Mucusless Diet Healing System, is because of a not being able to deal with social issues that come about. And oftentimes it either catches people by surprise, comes out of nowhere. I try to talk about it a lot, in the videos and the things that I write about, but it's one of those things you can never really prepare somebody 100% for what they're in store for in terms of the social thing. The diet part is actually fairly easy and simple, and you just transition. Don't beat yourself up because everybody falls back. The difference between the Mucusless Diet Healing System practitioner and a garden variety raw foodist or a vegan or somebody that has a chronic illness that tries to use the Mucusless diet for a period of time, or tries to use some other naturopathic modality for a period of time. The difference with a very conscious Mucusless diet practitioner is going to be understanding the way in which you take a step back and the way that you take a step forward, and that it's okay to take a step back and that it's okay to take a step forward. And what I mean by that is it's okay to take a step back into Mucusville. Every now and again, you take that step on back and you eat what we call mucus lean, is what Arnold Ehret called those things that had a little bit of mucus in it. Mucus lean meals, mucus less. If the strict definition of a mucus less meal would be one that would be totally fat free, totally starch free, would be mucus free. So, but these terms sometimes are, I don't like to get super strict with terms in terms of it's not something where you have to be, I am mucus lean right now, and I am. It's like what the broad sense of practicing the mucusless diet. It's all in there. Eating mucus lean is in there. Fasting is in there. Doing the colon irrigation is in there. Having relapses and going back and eating some stuff that you wouldn't even want to tell people that you ate is in there. It's all in there, and you won't get any flack from me on when those things happen. Is to be expected. I did a video series on addiction to pus and mucus, and you can find that on the blog at mucusfreelife.com. But that really gets into where you have to take this seriously, take this addiction to mucus forming foods seriously, and understand that on one hand, yes, the optimal diet for humans is mucus free and mucus free fruit level, but we have to be very strategic and realistic about where we're coming from, how long our bloodline has been eating terribly, and find a transition that makes sense. And now I just saw there's a question that someone posted, and I'm going to get to all the different questions and stuff, but someone had posted a question just now about, just the transition, like, well, how long does it take when you say the transition is forever and this kind of stuff. And I'll talk more about it, but one of the initial thing that I thought about was, on one hand, I like to frame things in terms of art and the concept of, I'm a musician and artist. I find myself in a community of artists, and that's where I feel most comfortable. Those are the people that, even whether they practice a Mucusless diet or not, I fit in an artist community, and it's a mentality. It's not just like what way people are dressing or all this kind of stuff or whatever. And the individuality, and there's a personality thing that is just, to me, more interesting in artist circles. But it's a mentality. It's a mentality of freedom through refinement. freedom through refining oneself and always trying to get to the next level. But first you have to have a vision. You have to see something that is beyond where you're at right now that you would like to attain and achieve. And so the higher you set your goals, then, the further you're going to go. And I always say, well, set your goals even higher than you think that you can get, because you're going to reach for it and you're probably not going to get it, at least not at first, but you're reaching for it. So it's going to take you higher. But where we have to get a bit realistic is it's not always about, well, how long did you fast, or how long did you eat nothing but fruit, or what, there's these like benchmarks, these kind of goals that are traditional, that a lot of people, these are the kind of goals that they want to talk about. Like, okay, I want to do this. But my thing is, well, how long can you be totally mucus free? How long can you stay on a relatively clean mucus lean period? Because within the world of mucus lean, I mean, any of these levels, there's an entire reality that's in there. But with mucus lean, you can have something where it's just one little piece of, like Eric talks about, the well-toasted wheat bread. So you can have an entire vegetable, the raw salad, a little bit of cooked vegetables, and then one piece of wheat bread after you've eaten all that. That's a fairly refined, that little bit of wheat bread is within terms of a Mucusless diet perspective is relatively benign. Now, if you're, the hardcore raw food mentality, or the hardcore, someone that already has a wheat sensitivity, no, wheat's not the greatest thing in the world. As Mucusless diet practitioners, many of us would rather see someone eat a piece of well-toasted wheat bread than an avocado. And that's one of the things that sets us apart. Something has to set us apart, because this is very different than the garden variety raw foodist methodology and mentality. Very different from the garden variety vegan mentality and other naturopathic systems or diet, or if I grant them the word system, there's not a lot of, I don't see a lot of systems out there. I don't really see a lot of systematic approaches that are as systematic as Eric's work, but that is, that's the brilliance, and that's the simplicity yet the sophistication of what we're bringing to the table with Arnold Ehret's Mucusless Diet Healing System, and just trying to get deeper and deeper into understanding the dynamics of the transition and what that means on a larger scale, because it's not, we talk about the transition of food, but you're also transitioning socially. Sometimes there's certain social situations that you don't need to be a part of anymore, and you need to there's a part of you, but you might have to transition out of it. You might not be able to just say, okay, I'm never going to do such and such again. I'm never going to a club again. I'm never going to a bar again. I'm never going to a restaurant again. Some of us have done stuff like that as a part of our transition, where we said, I'm done. I'm not eating there no more. I'm not doing this no more. I'm not hanging with these people no more. I know I was a little bit more hardcore than a lot of people are when it comes to the social battle, because I wasn't going to compromise. I transitioned. When I look back, I had to be honest, say I transitioned, but I transitioned pretty intensively, more, and was not scared of being alone, just not scared of saying, no, I'm a loner. I'm doing what I do. And, because I was in college, and all the people that I used to hang with, that was all done. It was like, because they're doing the exact opposite of what I'm trying to do. They're going and, wanting to smoke and drink and get midnight Taco Bell and, go pizza at 3 a.m. at the corner pizza's place and all this kind of stuff that I had done a year before. But I got serious about the diet, and I was like, I just can't be in that environment and expect myself to make this change and make this transition. And so I just scrapped stuff. I just cut a lot of stuff out. And in the process, there was people that thought I was antisocial. People thought that I was losing my mind and I was crazy and all this kind of stuff. And the way that I dealt with it was basically, I just did a mentality where I sort of expected the worst. That, not everybody needs to use that, but I basically just, I expected nobody to give me support with the Mucusless diet. I mean, like I said, I had Brother Air and I had the community, but early on, I still, in the real early period, to gain respect in the community, I had to do something first. It wasn't enough that I was just interested in the diet, that I was just like, hey, I'm trying to do. It's like, no, I had to, before I would be taken seriously by the likes of Brother Aaron, other people in the community, I had to do something. I had to kind of get myself over humps for, kind of by myself. And then once I could be taken seriously and I had more good questions, gotten past the beginner level, then it was then it was a little different thing. But by that time, I had eliminated a lot of my past social hookups and the things that were holding me back. So by the time I started really hanging out seriously with Brother Air in the context of the Mucusless diet, I had already shed a lot of those things. A lot of that, the desire. That what happens is, you start fighting internally about, there's a part of you that still wants to go to that party, or still wants to go out to eat at that restaurant, with the family, or still wants to do all these things. But the Mucusless diet part of you is saying, like, you're not going to be able to control yourself. You think you can, or you think that you can bring, and you can go through a period of that. We all went through a period of trying to go to a restaurant and bring your own food. You come with your own stuff, and and at a certain point, you start getting conscious, and you realize that you really can't trust the cooks in the back at all to not cross-contaminate. They could slice up a steak and use that same knife to try to cut your salad or something, and so these things just grow as you start to awaken and really understand what's going on. But it was, it was a trip. So I had to really I had to make the decision, am I going to be serious about this and allow it to take me wherever it's going to take me, or am I just going to kind of have one foot in and one foot out, where I'm like, okay, I'll dabble with the diet, but then I'm also going to try to partake in a lot of the mucus and pus lifestyle. And I had the wisdom early enough to see that there was no way that was going to work. And so a big part of me being able to excel early on was basically just letting go and not getting in my own way, not allowing my own desires and my own social and social desires, and addictions and things to slow me down, and hinder my progress along the Mucusless diet. And it was not easy, but I had I was just so determined mentally. I just so determined that it was not going to be a question. If I had to be by myself talking to if I had to if I had to be like how I grew up, where I was the only child, so I didn't really have a lot of siblings to play with, and kids to play with. There was maybe once a week there was some kids that would come next door that I might be a play with. But as far as living with people my own age, as I grew up, to have that type of camaraderie and that kind of relationships, I don't even know what that's like. And so all I know is creating my own world and creating my own mean, you want to talk about imaginary friends, and I had all kinds of little animals and buddies and stuff that I created, you know. And so with that background, I was ready to take on the Mucusless diet with as much with any amount of solitude that would be necessary. But what I noticed was, as soon as I let go like that, and I had that kind of attitude, that's when everything got easier. Then all of a sudden, there's a lot of friends that come out the woodwork, a lot of people that have similar interests in plant-based living, Mucusless diet, and fasting. And they kind of, I didn't know they were there. And we talk about that a lot with the concept of, you know, law of attraction and this kind of thing. But it's real on especially on a social level, where you start to be attracted to people that's living like you, you know, that were and thinking like you know, in that level of consciousness, so you can commune in that headspace, and you can, you know, commune, and it just works. And so that's what you have to be open to change. All of your friends that you have now, and I'm not telling you to get rid of your friends or anything like that, but I'm saying, are you open to the possibility that you're gonna that those relationships aren't gonna work as well once you really get serious about the Mucusless diet? And are you prepared to allow yourself to develop new relationships? For me, like I said, I just wasn't scared about that. Like because I don't like attachments. You know, I don't want to feel like you have to be attached in some kind of unnatural way. I think that we can have a very, you know, I mean, there's a lot of traditions that talk about that in terms of that unnatural attachment and is not a good thing. And that wisdom, I kind of got that. And I was studying a lot of things at the time, and that was also confirming that. So it made sense to me to do what I could do to release these attachments. And of course, you know, and I used other things in addition to the Mucusless diet. There's other tools that I used along the way, you know, Sedona method, which I'm gonna do a video just on that sometime and talk about my experiences with that, which I've found to be a powerful tool and a very natural tool. But the whole point there is just that you release emotional issues that are trapped, that we've forgotten how to naturally eliminate emotional issues. And so the you know, things like the Sedona method and that kind of stuff can kind of help with reteaching you how to let go of the various emotional issues, you know. And so the social and the emotional go hand in hand oftentimes, because that's where our emotional lives kind of live. In that, on one hand, you might have an emotional connection with food, but oftentimes there's an emotional connection not only with the food, but also with the social situation in which you ate the food. And so, and I talk to a lot of people oftentimes where they're fine as long as they're eating at their home, but it's like, well, it's been a long time and I haven't, you know, my friends are going out to such and such restaurant, and we've always done that for years. We've done that, and even though I'm on this diet, I can go with them once and I'll be okay. I won't eat anything funny. And then you go and you hang out and you might have some fun, but you end up eating some stuff that you wish you hadn't ate. You end up drinking some stuff you wish you probably didn't drink. Might even smoke something that you didn't want to smoke. and it's the relapse, and it's the ultimate relapse trigger. It's almost guaranteed. Everybody I know almost goes through something like that. You know, so we've all been there. But what I try to impart is a little bit of wisdom so that you can either see it coming or maybe you don't have to go through it. Maybe you can make a decision and say, all right, this everybody else went through that. Because I've been able to hear about everybody else's story, I'm gonna go the other way. I'm gonna try something a little different, And so that's what I hope, that the sharing of information and the sharing of different people's stories and on the forum and all that kind of stuff, I hope that is something that can really help each other, so that we can elevate the practice. So stuff like that, we all don't have to go through. Each person that's getting into the diet don't have to go through that to the same degree, because we're trying to create a support system where there's, first you have to have people that are into the diet. You have to have people that are somewhat educated and knowledgeable about it. And then, if they're into the diet, they should be, more than likely, they'll be kind and helpful and supportive. Hopefully they've gotten rid of enough pus out of their system where there's not too much, antagonistic kind of stuff. Because that's really all that is. I mean, when people start getting real, argumentative or antagonistic or anything, we just say, oh, that's an elimination. But that's just some old pus. That's some old fish or chicken or something that's circulating in their system that came out to say hi, as they, get in there and lash out at somebody or criticize somebody in a indelicate manner or whatnot. And so, yeah, so that's that. So let's get to the Q&A. So I can sit here and just talk, can't I? But yeah, but I always really appreciate you guys tuning in, and it's a privilege to be able to broadcast like this out and have people really listen. Is to be able to have some of these videos are fairly long that we do, but there a lot of people are really watching them. A lot of people are really going through them and have some really good questions in relationship to them and good insights of their own stories. And so I love all that. Just keep on sharing your story, keep on interacting with others. I know now I would say while it's on my mind with the forum, if you've applied to join the forum, but I haven't let you in yet, and you would like to kind of get in there, send me a message in Facebook, send me a private message. I had to kind of slow down the rate at which I let people in the group, because it started getting a lot of people in there, and I didn't want to just, I really don't want what happened to Dr. Morris's old group happen to our group, the Mucusless Diet. So I kind of let people in slowly, make sure that they can, kind of acclimatize to the situation in the group, that there's if there's any bad apples, that we can kind of remove them quickly without too many issues. And sometimes spammers try to get in. I try to weed my way through spam accounts and stuff. And so that's what's going on. And it is, public forum. And so even if you're not in there, you can still follow it, or you can still read and see what's going on if you're not in there right away. But if you're watching this and you get this, and you're getting this message and you want to make sure to be accepted in, just send me a message, and I will look over everything and get you in the group. But so, all right, without any further, as they say, ado, let's talk a little bit about some of these questions. Some pretty good questions this time around. First question is very simple, to the point. This is from Gene, and I'm not sure, this was probably posted a while back, I think, on the forum. But it says, so no table salt for life, huh? So I wanted to talk a little bit about the salt issue. What I'll do is maybe I will screen share. Let's see here. Let's see how we do. Okay, I'm attempting to screen share. And sometimes this takes a moment to get things moving. So what I'm looking at is the annotated Mucusless Diet. And my computer is working through some things here. And okay. So right. Okay. All right. So Eric doesn't specifically forbid salt, but there's certain things he says that alludes to the fact that salt is not optimal, that's not the thing. And what some people don't understand, Eric talks a lot about mineral salts and uses the word mineral salt a lot. But kind of to talk basically today, people might just say minerals, but he said mineral salts. But here he's talking specifically about table salt and said, even if the use of table salt is discontinued, which presupposes that table salt should be discontinued on a mucus diet. So even if the use of table salt is discontinued, you will sometimes be very thirsty during your transition diet because your mucus now back in the circulation and the waste of decayed unnatural foods eaten with salt during your former life is very salty. When in the circulation, you will suffer from unnatural thirst. So again, this is one of those things where you can kind of have to read into things a little bit, where it says, even if table salt is discontinued. There's some other text written by Fred Hirsch where he goes a little bit further and specifically talks about how salt is not good. So there are, definitely alternatives to salt. As you clean yourself up, you crave less salt. As you, some people say that craving salt is related to adrenal weakness. That's sort of, it's kind of another issue. Here we're mainly talking about the body wants to eliminate that which is unnatural. So once eliminates salt. One of the only things that you can understand or hear about from someone that's practiced mucusless diet for some time is that the salty nature of your mucus does go away if you are practicing the mucusless diet long enough and you're getting clean enough and you're off of stuff like table salt long enough. Then that a lot of that real salty nature of the mucus that might come out of your nasal cavity or in your mouth or something like that eliminates from time to time. The salty nature of it is eliminated to a large degree. And so that right there is letting me know that salt is an elimination. That's something that the body wants to eliminate. It's an unnatural sort of mineral substance that we can't use. The body can't use, at least not in that state, not the white salt state. In terms of addiction, there's stuff that you can use that tastes salty that you can use on your salad or your vegetables or something. The dulse flakes or dulse is a sea vegetable. That's something I didn't use that in my early transition, but I got into it later on. And the kelp and all these kind of things are, I think they work for that type of, when you feel like you kind of want something salty. And what I noticed with those is the experience. If say you put some dulse on a salad, the next day when you wake up your mouth should not be dry. And now if you have table salt in that meal, I can almost guarantee you the next day you might just wake up dry. You might even taste some saltiness in your mouth and stuff. And so yeah, so that's an issue. Now there is another part where Eric, he kind of does one of those things where there is a bit of confusion about, okay, I'm trying to, technical issue. Okay, here. Where he says that, let's see. Well, here's another space where Eric talks about table salt. You lose all desire for, and in fact cannot stand these stimulating spices, especially table salt, any longer. All of these unnatural foods are extremely bitter, and in fact, for normal nose, they possess an offensive odor. The sense organs of humans are in a pathological state embodied in pus-like mucus and waste, the same as the entire system, and being in a partly decayed condition themselves, they find this half-rotten food palatable. So again, we have to ask ourselves the question, why is salt a thing? Why did we get into salt in the first place? And you start studying the history, and you see on one of the possible narratives, it's not the whole story, but one of the narratives is when you have pus-eating humans, or humans that started to have the taste for flesh, dead decaying animal flesh, then they didn't have refrigeration. Refrigerators have been around, whatever, 100 something years, or 200 years, and maybe there was ice boxes and little cubby holes, or people would dig into the ground or something and try to have cool places to put things. But it wasn't like what we have now, where we have these electronic refrigerators, so stuff could easily get rotten. How are you going to take something from one location to another location and transport it? Or how are you going to preserve it? Salt and other spices became a very important tool for pus-eating humans to use in order to, on one hand, preserve the dead animal flesh, and on the other hand, make it palatable. Basically mask the rot taste, mask the rot. So, when we think of, that's why I like to use it. You like to use the word meat. I always say dead animal flesh, because dead animal flesh, it's rotting. As soon as that animal, when that animal's dead, it starts to happen to its flesh. It rots. When you die, what happens to your flesh? It rots. It starts to decompose, and doesn't smell good to us. The rotting and decomposing flesh doesn't smell good for a reason. And in order to be there's very few humans that would just go and find a dead antelope and then start eating it, like an animal that is actually a carnivore would do. Humans, we got all these little cook the meat and put the spices on it and all this kind of stuff. And so I gotta tell people, all right, well, if you really think you're a carnivore, kill the animal with your bare hands or your teeth, and then eat it raw. And then I will reconsider my stance that we are not fruitarians, that we're carnivores, even though I really won't. But you have a better case. You have a better argument. You'd be like, look, I'm a carnivore. I went in my backyard, and I was on all fours, and there was a squirrel, and I ran. and I bit the squirrel, and I went, ah, and I killed the squirrel, and then I ate the raw squirrel. You see how silly we are. How silly is that to think that we're meat eaters? It's silly when you really think about it. And why would we choose, depending on what culture you're in, say, well, dogs are man's best friend. They're kind and gentle creatures, and they're loyal creatures. So they're going to be part of my family. So we're not going to eat them. But this cow over here, now that cow was put on this earth for the sole purpose of feeding us. Well, why? You know, that cow, that cow, if you hit the cow, it will move and cry and scream out in pain, just like your dog would or your cat would. So why are we going to eat this cow, this pig, or this horse? Well, you know, a lot of people eat horse. The horse is one of those kind of in between, because there's some people's like, well, I'll eat a horse, and other people's like, no, that's you know, I was gonna try to come up with some racehorse name. You know, that's you know, Sparky McShevitz Field. I don't know. I didn't come up with anything too good, but yeah. So that is something that it just shows the ridiculousness of pus society, of a society based in pus eating. And that we have to change the language, because that's what, on one hand, that gets people attention, and we're talking about something very specific. We're not just saying, well, you know, meat eating and a plant-based. It's like, no, there's pus eating. We had to be very clear. Pus, when we say pus eating, pus forming foods are foods that decompose and decay into pus. And while we're talking about pus, I think I got a definition of pus in the okay, so I'm going to read this from, in fact, let's see, maybe I'll read it out of the book here. So we got number 15. So the word pus is from late 14th century Latin pus, related to puter or putrid or rotten. From Proto-Indonesian European pu, compared to Sanskrit pyati, meaning rots, stinks, stinking, foul. Pus often refers to a thick white, yellowish, or greenish opaque liquid produced in infected tissue, consisting of dead white blood cells, bacteria, tissue debris, and serum. So that's sort of definition number one, pus. And then we got, it also refers to the substance that dead animal flesh is chemically changed to after being consumed or while rotting. Thus, the ingestion of meat and dairy products create pus residue in the body. So this is a thing that we often have to make clear to people when we say mucus forming foods. I'm not just talking about foods that have an effect on the lymphatic system, that create some kind of lymphatic response, because mucus-free foods can do that. You could eat a lemon and get a mouthful of mucus. That lemon didn't put the mucus in your mouth. If anything, it was astringent. It has an astringent quality on the mucosa, on the lining of the of your inside, the mucous membrane, as they call it. And so it's kind of pulling out this this thick stuff that we call mucus, but it's, you know, it's lymph fluid. We could also call it that to not be confused. But when we're talking about mucus forming foods in its totality, not only does the mucus forming foods end up causing the lymphatic system to back up so that it doesn't eliminate the way and filter the way it's supposed to, but at the same time, in your intestines, it remains largely uneliminated, and the residue of it does not leave your body. And so the longer that this residue stays in your intestines and stays, and get crusty and get old and hard, and you can see this stuff come out when you start doing, like we do lemon juice enemas, a lot of us, to practice the Mucusless diet. If you want to learn more about lemon juice enemas, I recommend this book, Spira Speaks. I have a kind of a how-to, step-by-step how-to process on lemon juice enemas. You know, Eric himself didn't talk about lemon juice enemas. That's kind of an innovation that some of us have brought to the table. If you're a hardcore Eric literalist and want to just do water enemas, then that's, you know, that's fine. You know, we just basically share what we do and what we brought to the table. And for most of us, the lemon juice enema has become standard in terms of it really it loosens up waste and really gets into the nooks and crannies and crevices of your colon and intestines and things. So I won't get too far off track on that. But so as far as salt goes, I mean, again, it's just about transitioning. If you use certain kind of, like, say something that's canned, or some kind of, something like that, that might have a little salt in it, then that's one thing. I had that there was, especially in the early days, I would have salt that might have been in something that I used like that. But I quit using the table salt. You know, I just didn't, or anything like that where I was putting on stuff. You know, I used a lot of onion powder, garlic powder. You know, those spices to me were kind of good. Maybe some of those little salt-free spice formulas, combinations, some of that kind of stuff. But, you know, at the end of the day, it's just transition. You don't have to be, just know that it's not necessary, and that there are other things that you can use that eliminate better, that are relatively cleaner and easier on your system, and that, you know, just to keep on moving. And overall, Eric, even though he talks about the harm that different condiments can bring, he also kind of has a little caveat that says, when compared to the pus forming foods, or when compared to certain mucus forming foods, the condiments are fairly benign. So if you are going to slip up and go back to something, it would be better to go back to some salt, or to go back to some vinegar or whatever, than to go back to a piece of chicken or a piece of fish or something like that. And so everything has to be understood within certain kind of framework and context. Because again, this system affords you the opportunity to push yourself as far and as fast as you want to go. Now, maybe there's some limits on the speed at which you want to go, and that frustrates some people because they want to go faster than their body can allow. But what I've found most of the time is it's people's mental capacity can't really go as fast as their body can go, because the addiction, the hardcore addiction and the fundamental addiction that is, you know, kind of holds you back from actually going all the way with it, you know, physically. And so again, we just say, you just keep going. You just keep transitioning, and wherever your mental, you know, because the mental and the physical start to commune. but it takes time. And once you can kind of get your physical and your mental to be on the same page, then then things, it can be a lot less chaotic and a lot easier to deal with. But until then, if mentally, if you're trying to reach for some stars that are way too, like you feel like you should be able to reach it today, yet physically you're coming from something that's really atrocious, that's not being realistic. That's not being honest with yourself about what you should really, like, where your focus should really be at and what you should really be doing. And that sometimes results in people trying to push themselves too hard and not going far enough. But again, that's why I always say this is an art form. It's not a science. It's an art form, and each artist has to figure out certain things for themselves in terms of practice, in terms of knowing how to get better, and go further. And so hopefully that kind of answers the salt issue a bit. I'm sure we'll talk about it more at some point. But okay, so here is a question from Lakshmi. Dear Spira, Lakshmi here. I am 18 and enlightened by your wisdom and in awe. I am wanting to make a change. It's a lifestyle choice, and it can change my future, but my mother is against it. She says I am growing and I am a girl, so this diet won't suffice my body for development. I want some advice from you. I am really into this. Help me. Is it too early to start for me? And as a girl, will this diet cause me any harm? Forgive me for my ignorance, but please help me. Well, it's not. It's a good question. It's not ignorance. Some wisdom of yours can save my sleepless contemplating nights. I have ordered the book already, but if you could reply, it would be an honor. And so thank you for your question. And hopefully, I think I received this a while back. Hopefully you, the one thing that you'll notice that with Mucusless Diet practitioners, we operate on a different tempo than a lot of people. So with us, it's like time unfolds gradually and relaxed. It's a little, it's not that we're slow. It's like we are, there's not that stimulation rush. It's not like there's this, okay, we got to do this. And like, hey, it's like that. That's a real mucus kind of vibe, where we're just more, you might ask a question and then, like a month kind of passes like a day for some of us. Where, so you could ask a question and then a month later it gets answered just like you asked it yesterday. And and I know sometimes that's not the greatest thing. So if you ever really need something super, advice that's real important, then you kind of have to say like this, like emergency, or or the content has to sort of be a real emergency type of vibe, or, if you pay for a consultation, then obviously that kind of gets you right in the door on that level. But as far as, some of these questions, I know I've been collecting them over the past couple months, and then it's like, okay, well now we talk about it. And that's just been the thing I've noticed, because I look at the tempo of some of the other, like the YouTube, some of the raw food guys and some of the other people, and it's like it's just a different vibe coming from our camp. It's like things have to just be done when we are inspired to do them, and sometimes it's good to let, I like to see people learn and figure things out sometimes for themselves. And so it's interesting to see someone work through something where they might ask a question, but then they really want that answer, then they keep trying to find it, you know, and then by the time, you know, I or Brother Air, somebody answers sometimes, then that we can actually add to what you already figured out on your own and then contribute to that. And it has its own space and time, you know, because things have unfolded differently than they do in these, you know, in some of these other circles and stuff. So I don't know if, you know, I hope that makes a little bit of sense. That makes sense. As far as when I say tempo, you know, it's just a different, you know, we go about things differently and approach things differently, and it unfolds and happens at a different rate because it's you know, it's much more calm, it's more collected, thought through, you know, as opposed to just having like, you know, reactivity. So yeah. So anyway, as far as age and all that kind of stuff, I mean, you'll first thing I say is get Spira Speaks and read the chapter on Samantha Claire, and she was, I think she was either, she was 19 or 20 or 21, or she was, you know, fairly young when we were having these conversations, and she had just graduated from school, went back to her parents' home for a while, and I was trying to help her and guide her on how do you practice mucusless diet as a young person in your parents' home, and you know, how do you deal with that if your parents are not on the side of the mucusless diet at all, but you're living there and you want to live like this, you're like, you want to do the diet, what do you do? And so, you know, I helped her work through some of those issues at that time, even if it's something as simple as, you know, when you do an enema, you turn on the faucet, you turn on the bath water or something, you know, the shower when you're doing your enema, like you're in the shower, but you're doing an enema, you know. I mean, these are things that, like I say, I just give advice of that supports what you want to do, because I'm not telling anybody to do anything. I'm just saying that if you're serious and this is and you know that this path is for you, then nothing should really stand in your way. I mean, there's obstacles, but there's really no excuses. And so, like, for instance, I think one of the issues that Samantha had was she was wanting to start a fast. If I recall correctly, she was wanting to start a fast, and her dad was going to take her to the wholesaler to get some, you know, get what she needed for the fast, but ended up, for some reason, he didn't want to take her, and then she, you know, she had to she didn't know what to do. So I tried to help her think through that. You know, a lot of the practical part of practicing the diet is about critical thinking and critical analysis on a very practical level, you know, where you think about your life situation, you know, who you're living with, and how, you know, how you're making your money, how you're doing this, where you're buying your fruits and vegetables. Is there a better place to buy it? That, you know, is there a better wholesaler in town where you can get more stuff, or can you get a deal with somebody? You know, I've went to farmers markets and struck individual deals, but you have to ask for that, because these are things. This is part of practicing the mucusless diet. It is not a standard status quo lifestyle, so you have to think outside the box. And sometimes, and for some people, that's exciting and it's right up their alley. For other people, if you're used to kind of staying, you know, going by the book and the rules, and, you know, live, you know, society, and, you know, you do all that kind of stuff, then sometimes thinking outside the box is not the easiest thing to do. And so, but that's what I try to give a few examples to spark your imagination. But at the end of the day. But that's why it's interesting to talk to a mucusless diet practitioner. It's like somebody that's really done this, because it's like talking to a soldier that's been to war, that has interesting stories, or I love the stories of like jazz musicians and just musicians in general have great stories to tell. The elders, they've lived a lot of life, they have a lot of great stories. And so Mucusless Diet Healing System practitioner should have some incredible stories to tell about things that they did and had to do in order to practice this diet in the climate that we're in the social and economic climate of the world right now. We are the pioneers and the pilgrims trying to survive and live a lifestyle that in pursuit of our happiness, of what we want to do, yet it often conflicts with the status quo, with the standard societal norms and the way things are supposed to be by the framers of the media, the framers of mainstream and capitalistic thought. They they sort of wrap everything up in a particular bow that is basically set up to keep you ignorant, that's set up to keep you high, keep you drunk, keep you befuddled, keep you in fear. And we talk about physiological liberation. Our goal is not just, for me, physiological liberation is like the last frontier of liberation. And if you can unlock the physiological liberation, and you can liberate yourself from economic issues, you can liberate yourself from a lot of, emotional issues. There's a lot that, physiological self-realization can unhinge, and really undo. And like I said, I think it's, for modern humans, it's if it's not the last frontier, it's the current frontier. It's what we got to do now to get to whatever the next thing would be. We got to go through the physiological part. And anybody that has the opinion that the physiological part doesn't matter, and that it can all be done mentally, and you can you're entitled to your opinion. I respectfully disagree with that. I think that in terms of consciousness, you can take, if that's what you focus on, then you can take your consciousness pretty far out there. But you're always going to have a big anchor called physiological slavery, the physiological imprisonment. So you can think that you're free mentally, but the physical thing, and I'm not in agreement with the whole concept of, well, and where people are rushing to die, like that's some kind of like, well, I'm I want to commune with whatever, so I'm ready to die. It's like, nah, I'm not even going to entertain that way of thinking in terms of just personally, because that to me is diametrically opposed to our potential as human beings, as perpetual motion air gas engines. Like we haven't even explored that. We don't even know what our actual potential is physiologically. And we don't know how much further someone's consciousness can go in terms of self-realization in a clean vessel, in a perfectly clean body that's been cleansed for decades, maybe generations. Because there is another long-term piece to this that you could look at when you say, if you clean yourself up and you have a child and you help that child, because if that child is coming into your life and you're into this, then that child's, however you frame it, whether you say their karmic destiny or whatever word you want to use, they chose, or if you say they chose that or whatever, however that particular being came to be in your control, then that's what that being is supposed to be doing, is being a part of this rebirth of humanity, of getting cleaner, of taking things to the next level. And like I said, I'm gonna do the best that I can do, but I'm excited about 2 or 3 generations doing what I'm doing. So I'm gonna go as far as I can go, but I'm more interested in my children and my children's children, their potential, because they will not know and will never have to know what I've known, in terms of, they never have to know about a McDonald's reality. They never have to know about a Burger King reality. We can create realities for our family and our children that are diametrically opposed to what is out here right now. But we have to do the work. So that becomes our mission. That becomes our purpose. Can we put together a world and a society and an environment that is befitting of truly clean humans coming into this world? I mean, are we prepared to take on that responsibility, and try to create something, be the founding fathers and founding mothers of an entirely new existence on this planet? And, that's what I'm interested in. I want to be a part of that. And in doing so, oftentimes that means that I'm not a part of the reindeer games in Pusville, USA. I don't fit in there. I shouldn't be there because if that transition is going to happen, if I'm gonna create something where that doesn't even exist for my next generation, then at some point, I got to let it go totally. And so that will happen. So so for as far as the original, hopefully that kind of makes sense. I mean, as far as, just the direct answer to the question of, well, is it too early or all that? I mean, there's been babies that have been brought up on the Mucusless diet, young children of all ages. There's been, just people of all ages have gotten into this. It's really about you, and what are you prepared to do to pursue your happiness, the pursuit of happiness, the pursuit of physiological liberation. Liberation is happiness for me, that, like, because I don't, if ignorance is only bliss for a while, like, bliss from ignorance has a shelf life. So you could say, well, ignorance is bliss, but not for very long, because that ignorance comes sooner or later. It comes around, and you got to deal with. And the problem is, we as a society tend to ignore the dealing with wrong action. When Mother Nature brings the brings the brings about that, I was gonna say that, the chicken's coming home to roost kind of concept. When it's time to go through hell to pay for having lived against nature's laws, we don't make that connection, and we remain very ignorant of that level of human existence on this planet. And like I often say, I you know, for better or worse, I had to spend a lot of time in nursing homes with my ailing mother, in hospitals. So at a young age, you know, as someone that's, you know, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, I'm spending a lot of time in places that most young people don't even see on TV. They don't know what a nursing home looks like. Most children. And I'm not necessarily saying they should, because it's nice to have an environment where you're not surrounded by the sickness and you can kind of come up with some happiness, but at the same time, you are not you're sort of sheltered from what's real out here. And so the stuff that we're talking about and how real we get with the mucusless diet and disease and this whole piece, that can sometimes be harder for somebody that has been sheltered from how terrible this thing really is. And once you realize that you have control over much of human illness and that there is actually laws that govern our health, you know, there's laws that govern our chronic illness, all these things. Once we start realizing that, some people have breakdowns, like mental issues, because it hits hard and it hurts. You know, and so again, that's why I'm like, we got to create a whole different reality. And in the process, let that be our legacy. Let that be part of our cleaning process. Because when we are building these new things and clean, and at the same time cleaning ourselves, it should be inspiring. You know, it should be exciting to know that you're a part of the real deal, you know, really like change, you know, really changing. And like I say, be the change that you want to see in the world. And that's real. And so it's no amount of talking about it and all that kind of stuff. I mean, we're doing it. And we're creating these realities that we want to see and that we want to be a part of. And what ends up happening is the Pusville side of things, it ends up taking itself out, you know, and it can be hard if we have loved ones over there and but you can't, like you say, the pillar of salt. I mean, you can't turn back around. Sometimes you have to, if you are on course, you got to keep going. You can't, like, because as soon as you turn around, it's, you know, you get swept up in the storm too. And that's hard. You know, that's again why I say this is one of the hardest things to do. You know, about the diet, you know, being, you know, feeling like you're turning your back on friends and family when you're really not. If anything, your presence is offering a way out for them. But if their consciousness is not to the point where they can accept that, or if they're not ready, like, you have to be ready for this information. Not as logical as it might be, as basic as it can be broken down. If you're not ready, you're not ready. So if you're not ready, you're not going to resonate with this information, and no amount of breaking it down and sharing it, especially with loved ones, is going to help them get into it. You know, so if the one thing that can help is just you getting yourself to higher levels and being that positive influence. They're not going to go as far as you, but maybe they'll be a little bit more conscious. You know, maybe they eat a little bit more fruits and vegetables, you know, at least when you're around. and the desire is in the right place. And so I try to be sensitive to that if I am around, you know, friends and family or something where they might be trying even though they're not ready to really get in the Mucusless diet, and they're not ready to, they're terrified of enemas, and they're into their pharmaceutical drugs and all that. But over years I've had to learn to not judge and to not pressure anybody, to not try to make someone feel guilty because they're not doing what I'm doing or anything like that, but try to have a presence of unconditional love, and a real, not just the presence, but to have that, the presence comes from within, where they feel they can feel that you care and you love them and you want what's best for them, but at the same time you have an understanding that they are not ready, that they're not going to understand what you're trying to do. And so you don't fault them for that it's okay for them to not understand what you're trying to do. And it's okay for them to sometimes lash out at you because they know not what they eat. And, you have a vision of a better world and a better life for yourself, of a disease-free existence. And you're pursuing that. And so sometimes it's just higher levels of consciousness and being more aware and empathetic. Over the years I've gotten a lot more empathetic to people's plight, people's issues, and what people are going through emotionally and physically. Everybody's got a story, and everybody's got challenges. I don't care how much money you came up with or how poor you are, in terms of, monetarily, if you use that word, doesn't matter. Like a lot of blues men say, everybody can relate to the blues. Everybody has at some point has had the blues. Meaning everybody has had to deal with very tough circumstances, and your character becomes defined by how well do you deal with and confront said circumstances. And when you watch a movie, do you like characters that where everything just goes well all the time and everything is just happy, and and it's just real bland characters? Or do you like characters that have some substance to them? Characters that went through something, and as a result of going through something, changed, as they call it, a character arc. And how did they change? How did they confront and deal with these issues? They say, character building, or if somebody says, well, that person, they have good character. Well, what does that mean? In most cases, that means it's somebody that has a certain attitude of perseverance. Regardless of what life throws at them, they will keep going. They will keep pushing through. And the Mucusless diet will afford you the opportunity to develop a character unlike you would have been able to develop in any other modality, in any other way. This is the character building modality, as far as I'm concerned. This is a way to really develop one's character on a whole different level. And so I hope that answers that question. Let's see here. So I won't get too deep into this one. This was a question: can anyone recommend a natural cure for anemia, extremely low iron levels in the blood? I've been adding a handful of baby spinach to my meal every day, and added moringa powder to my smoothies, but it's not enough. I've had anemia for years, but it's got worse again this year. Thanks. And so, and this was posted on the forum, I think. And so the way I deal with this, because there's a lot of other people out there that kind of deal with the disease concepts and will kind of take these issues, you know, one by one. You check out like the Dr. Morris channel and stuff. You know, I try not to do too much of that when I work with someone individually. I deal with all these things. You know, I can deal with blood work and irises and all that can kind of tell us certain things. But at the end of the day, transition diet, fasting, you know, there's a method in the system that's involved that is going to be the omnipotent healing process. You know, no matter what else you get into, some of these principles are going to be the same, whether you get the principles from, you know, Dr. Morris in one way, or you get them from me or your Mucusless Diet book. You know, there's variations and things. Like I say, I don't, stuff that I talk about individually with people is that need to hear certain things and have certain advice is different from what I necessarily broadcast out when I'm talking in general terms to everybody. And I think it's important to do that because there are some things that I would like to see changed in terms of the way people think about stuff. You know, when you start talking about the herbs and you start talking about things in this nature, you know, I'm critical about the way, not the way people, well, I guess I would be critical of the way people do it, but kind of the way people think about in general these things. Is they carry over this consciousness of additive principle, of needing to add, you know, these nutritional concepts. They bring over this medicine, take something to heal this thing, you know, and well, not to heal, take something to treat this thing, you know. And so I just don't want to be associated with that kind of consciousness at all. There's definitely a usefulness for the herbs that I found, you know, after, and I went 10 years on the Mucusless diet without studying that side of things at all, you know. And then in recent years I've studied it, and I can see how it can be used within the context of the Mucusless diet. And I'm one of the only people that probably even can advise, you know, a lot of people within that. There's some people out there now, but you know, that really can deal with the transition on a deep level, and at the same time understand how can you combine a transition methodology and consciousness with some of these other, as I call it, the ancillary therapies, which include the herbs and includes the enemas, it includes the colonics, it includes the sunbathing, it includes exercise, it includes your Sedona methods and your mental release techniques. It includes your meditations and your yogas. These are all ancillary therapies that, when done properly, can support and nurture one's practice of the transition diet, one's practice of the Mucusless Diet Healing System. So, and I say all that just because that's normally, most people don't say all that. If they were asked a question about anemia, then they say, well, take these herbs, fast a little bit, you know, get your kidneys up with filtering and your adrenal glands going, you know, that's like the standard thing. And I'm saying we got to think about all of that differently and have a whole different, you know, really question that entire you know, worldview in terms of I think we say the you know, the disease consciousness. Let's see here. Brought up Spira Speaks. And okay, so we got page 44. So I'm gonna read from this, where I talk about, this is a response, clearing up myths with experience, and this gets a bit into the way that I like to analyze the realm of nutrition theories and, you know, all this kind of stuff. And so I say, whenever we are provoked by erroneous concepts that we have been programmed to respect since childhood, we must have courage in the unknown. Simple logic will always save the day. I know plenty of pus and mucus eaters who have suffered and died from disease, but I do not know anybody that died eating only fruits and green leafy vegetables. In this equation, the potential that is found in the unknown seems like a logical path to trod, as opposed to the undeniable fact that if you eat pus and mucus, you will suffer great illness and die. The following quote is from Wikipedia about the origin of vitamin B12. B12 deficiency is a cause of several forms of anemia. The treatment for this disease was first devised by William Murphy, who bled dogs to make them anemic and then fed them various substances to see what, if anything, would make them healthy again. He discovered that ingesting large amounts of liver seemed to cure the disease. George Minute and George Whipple then set about to chemically isolate the curative substance and ultimately were able to isolate vitamin B12 from the liver. From this, all three shared the 1934 Nobel Prize in medicine. Well, congratulations, gentlemen. You just confused a ton of people and took people down in an entire path that makes no sense. So you're going to torture dogs, and that's going to be the basis of your theory. That, you know, I'm not okay with that. I'm not okay with just accepting because most people don't even think about it as a theory. They don't question, they don't, you know, protein theory, calorie theory. Call it what it is. It's a theory, and not only is it a theory, it's a bad theory. It's a fallacious theory. It's a theory that is fundamentally flawed. And please don't take my word for it. Read the history. Read the history of the calorie theory. Read the history of the protein theory. Read the history B12 theory. Where I have my my quotes right here. I'll continue just a little bit here. So it says, check out this madness. Murphy reasoned that pus helped save an anemic dog from certain death. Twisted and absurd. Experiments of this nature could only be conceived of by a completely sick and vile creature. I use the word creature because it contains the word eat, E-A-T, creature. It is time for us to put our faith in our own bodies and experiences. The days of sick, bald creatures in white lab coats telling us about health are over. We are the scientists and the authorities on how the human body operates because we are the ones doing the work. In regards to vegetarianism and anemia, the sickness does not have anything to do with not receiving all of the goodness that livers and chickens provide, but the heavy starch intake in a mucus vegetarian's diet promotes an overflow of harmful dead white blood into the body. Obstruction/mucus. The misconception often derives from typical mucus vegetarians who become sickly and die faster than one-sided meat eaters do due to the morbid amounts of starches that they are consuming. This is something Eric talks about. The Mucusless Diet, he tries to make this distinction and say Mucusless Diet is not vegetarianism, and because many vegetarians are really starch-atarians. They're high starch eaters. And today, now I guess a lot of people that fancy themselves fruitarians are fat-atarians because they eat tons of fatty fruits and all this kind of stuff. But it's in terms of what we're talking about here. At the end of the day, look at what I recommend is, well, what's the symptoms? Because I don't really get into, like I say, I'm not, this is not medical advice. If you want diagnosis and medical advice, then go to a medical doctor. But I'm talking about is, you don't have to believe in a lot of these concepts. Like there's no, humans went many years living without having a lot of these concepts. So you can think about the same thing differently. So what are the symptoms that you're dealing with? In many cases, when you're talking about the so-called anemia kind of symptoms, you're talking about forms of obstruction that particularly are problematic to the endocrine system. So if you have weak adrenal glands and thyroid imbalances and issues and all this kind of stuff, people have rectified this, a lot of those things, using Mucusless diet, rational fasting properly, fruit diet, with throwing in the colon irrigation and the herbs, all the naturopathy, real naturopathy, Mucusless diet naturopathy. So when you start feeling these symptoms, kind of based on what Era talks about, I like to look at the symptoms and say, like, okay, what are the symptoms, instead of having this label of a disease that I just like put on my chest, like, this is my disease, because that's this kind of mentality that the whole medical world and establishment really want for us is, like, we own our disease. I am a survivor of this concept disease, and I was diagnosed with this. And so what we try to do is basically say, I mean, if you want to believe in that, fine, because I'm not telling you not to. That's your thing, and you want to believe that you have these kind of things, fine. I'm not saying that the symptoms aren't real and that some of the chemistry involved isn't real. So what's so dangerous about a lot of the medical science and stuff is it's not 100% wrong all the time. There's little bits and pieces that you can tease through and see, okay, well, like you see that, but because the foundation of it is so questionable, especially when you go back to the foundation, when you go back to the history of the origin of these concepts, and if you do so with a free mind that say, well, why did they think about it like that? Why not think about it like this? Because you could explain the same phenomenon in a total different way, with it coming from a total different headspace. What we do now is a form of, kind of like a postmodernist, reconstructivist historical analysis, where we just go back and we look and say, well, let's just look at the history and see if it still makes sense. Take it on its own terms. And that's just something that I really stress people do. So with all that said, that's kind of, and there's an article I got that and there's another, I write more about this in the third volume. I got a whole article on, actually, maybe I don't, I might actually taking that out of here, but there's there is an article that's on mucusfreelife.com on B12 theory, where I even go even deeper than what I just read there. And, so there's just different levels to deal with it. Like the Dr. Morris level is just, well, it's endocrine issues. Get your adrenal glands up, and cleanse yourself, get yourself together. That's gonna deal with that. Then there's the Brother Air level of consciousness. Say there's no such thing as B12. There's no such thing as anemia. These are words that were invented by people that had no clue about how the human body operates, and therefore created an entire world of understanding that's just sort of just based in ignorance and nonsense. So you can pick which, where your level of consciousness is at, whatever resonates with that. I'm kind of in the middle where I understand the chemistry, and I'm sensitive and empathetic to the symptoms. So I'm not going to tell you don't have to say, it's like, but we have to start to understand pus and mucus eating is the foundation of all of these symptoms, even if it's by way of some acids in your tissue system that start to irritate and destroy some of your internal glands and your internal organs. It's still, all pus and mucus forming foods are acid forming foods. They ultimately decompose into dangerous acids that harm the body. And so so when you follow that path, you can follow that piece of chicken that you ate in 1980 that never eliminated properly, that just started sitting on the side of your intestine. Eventually it became part of your tissue system. It kind of just melted into your tissue system, and now you got and dropped your pH fundamentally, and now you got these little pockets of all this acid. And that's what happens when people start fasting and they start doing enemas and eliminating, and they go through some uncomfortable stuff. These are acids that's coming out, and it's doing so by way of the lymphatic system, because that's all we have. That's what we got. We got the blood and we got the lymph, and between the two of them, we got to clean ourselves up. So, so that's where you get into the whole science of elimination and fasting and fruit eating, and, the whole people call it detoxification. So I hope that makes sense. I mean, we fundamentally just deal with this entire realm differently than probably anybody else that you would talk to, because most vegans and most raw foodists are into the standard nutrition theories, ways of thinking, which to me, which is kind of doubly problematic, because you're basically trying to be beholding to a theoretical construct that is based on pus eating, that's based on dead animal eating. And you want to try to maneuver the chemistry and the theories so that it relates to so that it makes sense within the realm of plant-based eating. But that's where I say, I like, why don't we just scrap all of it? Let's just scrap all that nutrition theory, all that stuff, and let's start over again. If we come to a point where something that resembles that is useful to us as we reconstruct a new paradigm, then maybe it'd be there. But where we're at now, looking at how much, all these people, everybody knows protein theories and vitamin theories, yet everybody still gets sick. Everybody still is getting chronic illness. If they knew first thing about how the human body operates, that wouldn't happen like that. So belief in a fallacious concept of calories or proteins or anything in that realm, it hasn't helped humanity. So at what point do you say, scrap it? We're done. You've had your chance. You've had 100 years, 150 years. Some of these theories have had 150 years to help humanity be healthy and make and get to these higher levels of existence. Yet they've done no such thing. They've hindered our progress toward health and cleanliness, and have created systems in which people that are able to monetize the additive side of things, they're able to get rich and stay rich. And even though they die of the same chronic illnesses that everybody else dies, they would rather be rich and die of congestive heart failure with $100,000 socks on than the poor person, the homeless person that died of a stroke or a heart attack. That in itself is a terrible mentality, because of all these if these people were so advanced, because there's this kind of concept that goes along with people that have money, like they're just so brilliant, just, oh wow, they're just, this is just these guys are just so brilliant, they just have all this money. If they were really so brilliant, or these politicians, these guys, if they were so brilliant, they wouldn't end up in hospices drooling on themselves. They wouldn't end up in wheelchairs, not being able to function. So again, that lets me know they don't know. They don't know what we're talking about. They might see us talking about it, but they don't really know what we're talking about. Or they wouldn't let that happen to themselves. I mean, I just don't think that any person that has any shred of humanity in them would, once they know this level of information, that they would let that happen to themselves. It just, like, I give up. Just pump me full of drugs and wheel me around. I'm good. Like, I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'm naive to that level of psychopathic, narcissistic stomach disorder that a lot of those folks have, but so anyway, I hope that helps. Let's see. Okay, here's something from Chris. Thank you, Professor Spira, for the vast content of information that you so readily share. I have a question about skin issue called seborrheic keratosis. I have this skin condition and no one ever speaks about it. I'm wondering if it's possible to eliminate this condition via the Mucusless diet. I'm already long-term vegan, live foodist, but I do eat lots of nuts and the condition persists. If you have or can provide any information regarding this horrible skin condition, I would greatly appreciate it. Many thanks, peace and blessings to you and yours. So, I mean, in general, when you have really chronic issues, or if it's, whether it's skin issues or anything else, you just have to get real serious about jumping into the transition fairly aggressively, getting into the fasting fairly aggressively, if you want to get over that issue quickly, or relatively quickly. So within the, and I won't give too much direct advice. If you want to talk, in a more private type of setting, I could really probably, get into your case a little bit more, but I'll say some general pointers. On one level, you get into transition where you have to have some mucus-free days, have some raw mucus-free days, have some days where you just have fruit and then salad in the evening and there's no nuts involved. Because I'm not saying just totally get off of all the nuts altogether. Now, if you are eating nuts, one Mucusless diet technique that's important is to make sure you eat it with raisins, so you're eating the nuts with the raisins. That's important. But, overall, for a lot of those kind of issues, you may have to dig deeper and push a little harder and further than maybe mentally you're ready for, or that you want to go. Sometimes some of these issues can take quite a bit of fasting, quite a bit of fruit eating to get to the other side of them. And along the way, there's different therapies. Again, like if we do one-on-one, I talk more about herbal possibilities in terms of I mean, all it does is to help stimulate certain things and to help eliminate certain things, so it's not really it's not a complicated, elusive kind of thing, but it has to serve the transition. It has to serve your fasting process, when you start getting in, because there is nothing that you can take that's some kind of magic thing. But get into the lemon juice enemas, you get into your fasting, just take it to another level, take it deeper, and kind of see what happens. And I'm not sure, I know there's a couple different kinds of your illness, I think, from what I read. And there's hope is it's not like the painful one, but either way, you got to get your kidneys filtering, so you can if you get in this period of green drinks, sometimes that with a lot of beets and parsley and that kind of stuff, that can get the kidneys rolling. Some kidney herbs you can deal with, the fruit juices. It's really just getting into excuse me, just really getting into the diet and the transition, and pushing yourself, get rational fasting, read rational fasting. We got that one here. But just you just have to really just get into the system, and then come back and let us know what's happening. It's kind of like, okay, really get into the system, just dive into it, and dive into some of the more advanced levels in terms of when we say aggressive levels of the fasting, the lemon juice kind of fasting or fruit juice fasting. I don't talk too much about the water fasting. There's people that talk about that. Eric, although he did do long water fast, his fundamental fast when he teaches in the Mucusless Diet is different levels of juice fasting. He talks about fasting drinks. There's a whole section on fasting drinks, and he talks about juice and stuff. So, so these are things, but I would just say, just get in, just dive into the diet, and dive into the side of it that explores the fasting levels. And of course, I'm not saying that you just go off and do long fast. Eric recommends starting out the 2 to 3 day fast. There's the no breakfast plan concept, where you eat some fruit in the afternoon and a salad in the evening. So there's these different levels to explore, but you just gotta jump in. You just gotta jump in and see what happens. Take your body to those levels and see where it takes you. So yeah, and so like I said, if you want to work, one-on-one, then I can get a little bit deeper. We can take that conversation a little bit deeper into your actual personal, case study. Let's see. This is Missy. Thank you for your response. What I've noticed is that as soon as I have acid-forming food, I get blocked sinuses and feel terrible. When I stick to non-mucus-forming foods, I feel great. So my question is, when do you think my body will be able to cope with the addition of acidic foods in low quantities without my body flaring up with mucus? Of course, I will ensure the majority of my diet is alkaline. I've been ill for 6 months, but I have to admit I have slipped up with mucus-forming foods quite a bit, with morning coffees with milk, small amounts of fish and chicken in my dinner time meals. I would like to get to a point where I can eat a small bit of fish or chicken without my body getting ill with mucus and acid. Do you think that's achievable? And if so, how long should I be strictly on alkaline mucus-free diet? As a female, I need cholesterol to make hormones, so I need fats in my diet, but all fats seem to be mucus forming. It's also confusing. Sorry for the long post. So, so sometimes I get, you get these where, on one hand, that's still that pus addiction is still talking, where because if you think about that, it doesn't make too much sense, because right in the beginning you say that you've been eating the non-mucus forming foods and you feel great, yet you still have an addiction to pus, so you want to be able to eat foods that are unnatural yet still feel good. And that is, my friend, what we call a paradox, because it's not, I would say it's really not achievable. I mean, you could get to a level where maybe you heal yourself and you clean something up, and then you go back to some of those other, the acid forming foods. And like I say, fish is actually the worst meat that you could eat. And I think I finally made a video where I broke that down a little bit, but so I should do a poll and ask, see who's been studying, who can tell me why fish is the worst meat. In fact, I'll do that. I won't explain it in the comment section. This is what we're going to do in the comment section. You tell me why meat is the worst, or why fish is the worst form of meat that you can eat. Coming from a Mucusless diet perspective, there's a very logical explanation why fish is like the worst thing. Like, if anything, you would want to not eat fish at all. But so we'll, I will let the commenters run with that, and you can answer that question, but just take my word. You can take my word for that if you would like, where fish is not really something that we would recommend, but that, that kind of thing, but that's your decision, that, because it's your path, it's your body, it's your life. And if you want to try to, that's a lot of people have used the Mucusless diet like that, where they have basically healed themselves of some kind of ailment or use it for a short period of time, and then they go back to eating a version of what they used to eat. But at the end of the day, they always have to, kind of come back and deal with the Mucusless diet again, because until you really get your body into where we're eating naturally, there's always going to be some issues involved. And along this path, there's the elimination issues and the reconstruction issues that we got to deal with anyway. But when you heal yourself and then you try to go back to some of those things, it's one of those things where certain things have already been revealed to you, consciously, physiologically. And your body wants that. Once your body remembers how good it felt eating naturally, then it doesn't want it. The body actually doesn't want to go, like, mentally, you want to go back, and you want to, because that in your head, that feels like that would be control. Like that makes sense to you, to be able to say, well, all things in moderation. If I just, if I eat a little bit of fish, a little bit of chicken, that's not that big a deal. But that's coming from more of a pus type of mentality. When we really look, like, what does Mother Nature have to say? If we were asked Mother Nature, like, is it okay for me to eat a little bit of fish and chicken? Mother Nature would be like, what do you think? Wouldn't even have to answer, like, no, like, that wouldn't, it's not natural. It's not natural for humans to eat any kind of dead carcass. So there's always, if we choose to do so, there's always going to be repercussion. So to try and find a way to, be healthy, it's like being healthy enough to, still be able to deal with those foods. I mean, it's not, to me, that's sort of the 1 foot in and the 1 foot out mentality that's actually dangerous when practicing the Mucusless diet. One of the sections in here, I say, don't try to straddle the barbed wire fence. And Spira Speaks, one of the articles, and it's actually sort of a similar scenario where someone wants to be able to heal themselves and then go back into eating old ways and feel good about it, or they still want to deal with certain concepts of the medical world and medicines and this kind of stuff. And it's like, and I have a tendency to recommend to people, like, you have to kind of choose one or the other. I know a lot of people don't. A lot of people try to, because in their head they think that that's balanced. Take a little bit of like this medical or nutrition kind of concepts, a little bit of it, a little bit of somebody else, a little 80-10-10, a little of this. And they're taking a little of all these different things. And the Mucusless diet is just fundamentally so different in terms of conceptually, because it's not only about what you do, but it's how you think about what you do, the explanation of why you do what you do, why you eat what you eat. So from a Mucusless diet standpoint, we wouldn't believe in the statement you said about the cholesterol and the fat and, good fats, bad fats, good cholesterol, bad. Like, we just scrap all of that, just that whole way of thinking, because people 200 years ago didn't think like that. And there were people in different places around the world. People in Europe might have only been living to be 30 years old and dying out at a relatively young age, but that's not what was going on in other parts of the world. Indigenous peoples in Africa and Australia and South America and North America and Central America. There's people that were living into much older ages than the kind of the modern day, I don't know if you want to call them social scientists or archaeologists or whoever it is that have put that talking point out there in the world, that we live so much longer today than we used to. I mean, I find that preposterous to even think like that. Problem is, that way of thinking is based on a very Eurocentric perspective that privileges European norms over the rest of the world. And so they look back, and there's not a whole lot of data that we can collect of the indigenous, and especially when you go back to when they were first really taking a lot of these records. The Europeans were explorers, were going to Africa and South America and Asian places, and they would be trying to write things down and talk about stuff. They didn't know the age of a lot of people. They could have walked into an indigenous African tribe and they could be talking to somebody that's 200 years old. They wouldn't know. And a lot of times they didn't know. They didn't want to know. They didn't care. So we have to look at that whole way of thinking as like, we just don't know. But based on the kind of longevity that a lot of, say, that people have, the islanders and a lot of indigenous peoples, they're not dying at 30 years old, and they're living in ways that people have lived for hundreds or thousands of years. So just to debunk that entire way of thinking, and I don't even know where I'd say that basically to get into that whole concept of, can you scrap some of these things that you've been programmed to believe in the there's new cholesterol theories and nutrition theories and the fat theories and all that kind of stuff? Or can you, if you don't, and like I say, don't take my word for it. Don't scrap it just because I told you to scrap it. I mean, check out the history, if you're inclined to do so, because anytime someone says, well, I need this, then you have to say, well, why? Because there's a lot of case studies of other people that don't consume whatever it is that has been said is needed, They don't consume that, and they're fine. And you can debunk these theories from both sides. You can debunk it from people that have fasted for long periods of time, and have eaten totally mucus free for long periods of time. You can also debunk it by people that eat nothing but potato chips every day, all day, or just junk food and candy, because they're not eating fruits and vegetables, and they don't die immediately. They're still living. So to me, and I've known some people like that would eat that never ate a vegetable almost in their life, and they rarely ate. I mean, they would go days and days and days eating nothing but Doritos and Snicker bars, and so those are case studies that, again, prove, because then if somebody comes and say, well, you have to have fruit, it's like, well, they're not eating fruit, and then somebody else says, well, you have to have meat. It was like, well, no, they're not eating meat. And it's like, well, you have to. What about the people like Brother Air that's done 40 or 45 day long dry fasting periods, and people that have done longer dry fasting, or that do the juice fasting, or so there's enough empirical data that throws all of that into question, from the fruits and vegetables to the meat and the dairy, to basically say, outside of air, what do we really need? We don't know. But when you look at the Mucusless diet, the shift occurs to where, instead of looking at things through what's, to me, kind of a medieval kind of concept. I was talking about this the other day with somebody, because it's the idea that you could eat a dead cadaver, and inside your body it magically turns into this life-giving stuff. That's like Care Bears, Lord of the Rings kind of thinking, like that's real magic. It's like magic. I can turn this dead, rotting flesh inside my body into life, like jazz hands. I mean, that's it's silly. It's a silly way to think, but at the same time, there's a lot of people that don't eat any raw foods, yet they can still live to be in their 70s, and that's, and a lot of meat eaters, a lot of people that want to eat poorly, that's the argument that they like to make. Like, well, so-and-so, I know so-and-so, and he smoked and drank and ate, terrible food, and he lived to be 90. Well, I mean, good for him. Give him a vegan cookie, or maybe give him a regular cookie if he's not a vegan. But that's not the point. If we're gonna have a point, the point to understanding all of that on a big picture scale is to say that, regardless of if you're a Doritos-atarian, or you're a fat fruitarian, or a Mucusless diet practitioner, whatever you fancy yourself as being, air is the one thing that is undeniable, because all of those other things can be taken out of the equation in different contexts. Because as soon as you start talking about people that are dry fasting, it throws everything into question in terms of what does the human body actually need, especially the cleaner we get. It's like the final frontier. I mean, that's what we're exploring. But to say that we need certain things, there's plenty of people that aren't eating that way, that aren't eating that. And now with Mucusless diet technology, we understand that fruits and vegetable eating, we're not eating that to try to get, at least in my perspective, I'm not trying to get iron and zinc and all these minerals, all this kind of stuff. I'm eating it because it helps cleanse me. It helps clean my blood. It helps clean my keep stuff moving through my intestines, leaves behind the least amount of waste, leaves behind the least amount of residue and mucus and things that will eventually turn into acids and destroy my body. So that's why I eat. I eat to cleanse. That's why I'm eating, is to cleanse, and it's that's a different paradigm. It's a different way to think about and a different explanation for why we eat, as opposed to the cashmere funk and the Francois Magenti. We got to eat in the Atwater. These are all pillars of the nutrition community, the founding fathers of these concepts that most people don't study or even know about. Those, it basically turns that on its head and just says, like, that's not even, like, we don't even need that. We don't have to think like that. We got a whole other way to think, to understand that the fundamental activity of the human body is to perpetually cleanse. Every time you breathe, I would say that the primary activity, or the primary reason that you're breathing, is to cleanse, to clean your blood. The oxygenate, to clean your system. And that is the fundamental thing. Now, when our body gets too encumbered with waste, that where breath alone can no longer clean the blood, we need some help. So then you call on some fruit and you say, hey, Mr. Cherry, I need your help to help cleanse me a little bit, to clean my blood. And then Mr. Cherry says, okay, I can help. I don't know why I went to Sesame Street real quick, but but that's it's just a different way to think about it. So, I'm not eating those cherries to try to get whatever calories, whatever people say is in it. I know that it's going to eliminate well. It's not going to leave behind slime, and it's going to loosen up some waste, and it's going to, create some nice bowel movements, and it's going to be all good. And so it's just, so I don't know. That just seems like it's very hard for people to wrap their head around simplicity, because it's a much simpler way to think about why we eat and how we eat, and when you have that consciousness shift or paradigm shift, you start to practice the diet and understand the diet a little differently. And really get more out of it, in my opinion, because it frees you up. It's liberating to not be bound by these concepts that nobody agrees on in the whole medical and the nutritional world. Talk to nutritionist A and nutritionist B and nutritionist C, and each one read different books, studied different stuff, and have totally different belief systems within the context of this nutrition theories. The only thing that they agree on is that the body needs certain chemistry in order to, to support, all this kind of stuff. It's the only thing they agree on. But you might have nutritionist A that swears by, like, you'll die if you don't eat fish. You got to have fish. You got to have your, your fatty acids and all this kind of stuff. The nutritionist B might be a vegan nutritionist, and they're like, well, no, you can't, that will kill you. Don't eat that, but you got to have these vegetables and this fruit and eat these supplements. Take these pills. The nutritionist C says something like, well, you don't need any pills, but take these herbs. These will help. These are nutritious. So, and they could all be accredited and have degrees and gone to, accredited schools and all that kind of stuff, yet they don't agree on anything when it comes to that realm. And so when you have something that is so segmented, then and the problem is, for as segmented as the nutrition and the medical establishment, as segmented as those worlds are, in terms of, if you follow the different like medical journals, and like you stay on the cutting edge of the theories and stuff, it's so segmented, yet that doesn't trickle down into the mainstream thought. So in the mainstream thought, you pick up like Oprah's magazine or Woman's Day or Diet Today or whatever, these little some of these I was going to say these silly magazines. Some of them are, if you enjoy it, fine, but when I see them at the store, they just look very silly, a lot of them, and they always sort of perpetuate these catch concepts, these little catchphrases and ideas. Superfoods, this week the important superfood is cherries. The next week the important superfood is, and then, well, they'll have avocados be the superfood like week after week after week. Avocados, this week superfood is avocado. What is it next week? Avocado, which should tell you something. Anytime mainstream embraces something around health, that should be the first indication that you want to run from whatever they're promoting, whatever it is that they're elevating. And you see people getting too excited about something. Like when people start getting excited about something, like an individual item, then it's probably going to be mucus forming. It's probably going to be acid forming. Like there's something wrong with it. As soon as the masses get excited about something, because I haven't seen the masses get excited about something like the simplicity things. Like it will be a new day in the world when masses of people get excited about Concord grapes coming out, and Concord grape season, or black grapes or melons. I don't see that. Like I've never seen a Woman's Day. Not that I follow Woman's Day magazine or Oprah magazine. Not that I sit there and then study those things, but I've never seen one on the front with Oprah like it's grape season, unless they're talking about wine. Now if they're in Italy touring the vineyards and it's about rotting foods, rotten fermented foods, because we can't have anything nice and raw, we gotta destroy it, we gotta make it filthy. And so if they're talking about wine, maybe they will be on the front with some grapes or something, but overall you're not going to see them with it's blackberries are out, and blackberry, and unless, I guess, maybe I'm sure somebody could find, maybe they'll feature it as a superfood, one of those, but overall it's going to be something like apple cider vinegar, this miracle stuff, or it's going to be, take these herbs, this herb has ginger root and this garlic and this, and then it'll be something that's real hard to find, or something, pomegranate, and they just find all these real obscure sort of things that are not down the middle. And anytime you see that, like I said, I would run the other way. Like I would just consciously do the opposite of whatever they talk about in those books. Like as soon as they start getting excited about something, I'm like, oh, I can't even. Nope. It's no, because it's just too backward. When you're dealing with that mainstream consciousness, it's just very, very backward, and it's replete with nutrition concept. I mean, it's based on that. Very rarely will you pick something up and they'll say, that maybe they'll use the word detox, because that's like a that's a mainstreamed catchphrase word where they're like, I'm a cleanse, like I'm doing a 20-day, 21-day cleanse. Like it grits on my nerves. It's that whole concept, because it's got to be a lifestyle. You gotta be prepared. Like do this. Either get yourself together and do this thing for real, or just go to McDonald's. You know what I mean? Like, and maybe I don't really mean that literally, because I'd rather see someone trying to deal with the vegetables and the fruits, you know, and leaving behind the McDonald's. But my point is that you got to go beyond that mainstream consciousness. I mean, you gotta bust past that, because you get stuck there, and it's not. It's just not pretty when you get stuck over in that world of it's like false positives, you know, being happy for the wrong reasons. Like you because they try to manufacture this kind of well, that's what a fad does. A fad basically manufactures this short-term excitement about something so that you get into it real quick. Like, oh wow, oh yeah, I'm get some, I saw this in a commercial, I'm gonna get these avocados, and then next month the feature item is cauliflower, and there's a lot of some kind of mineral in here, I want that. It's like, but look at that. If you're basing things that you're trying on these magazines that come out with something every other month or every other week, it's something that's fairly unrelated to the thing before it, then there's absolutely no way that you could be practicing a system, because that's as unsystematic as you could ever get, because there's no method involved. And those concepts can be coming from divergent nutritional points of view. And so what you end up with is someone that is just so dazed and confused with all of this misinformation in their head, and they've never really sat down and questioned and challenged these concepts to ask, is any of this even make any sense? Is it any of it necessary at all? And one of these days I should read my little part on calorie, because I keep seeing that coming up. It's just such a terrible theory. When you go back to the history of it, just the calorie theory. But I'll save that for another day. I know we got more questions to get to here. Let's see. What have you learned regarding the general causes of hunger? This is a question from Colin. And hunger changes quite a bit when you start to clean yourself up, where you don't have the experience of this sort of acid hunger that you used to have, where your stomach starts like churning and you're like, oh man, I'm hungry, I want some whatever. Like, once you clean out that 32 feet of impacted intestines, you get to a point where you don't really have that experience, and at least mine didn't. I used to get real hungry, because I was a chronic overeater of everything. So the whole experience of hunger shifts, into something different, because you don't have those really nasty acids in your stomach, in the same way. You don't have all that pus residue and mucus residue. You start to clear a lot of that out because of what you're eating, and then if you're doing the colon irrigation, and so for me, hunger is really based on just internal impurity, and just uncleanliness that is based in an acid reality, and it just makes things real uncomfortable. When you have other obstructions, other issues, then you go a certain period of time without eating, and your body starts to eliminate, then other symptoms can come in with the lightheadedness or the fatigue, and these all relate to weaknesses that you have, fundamental weaknesses. But it's kind of another issue in terms of just hunger. acids. That's the name of the game with that. And the Mucusless diet is set up to eliminate those acids and basically alkalize the system. And so insofar as that is the case, the current concept of hunger totally transforms into something different. And moving along here, I know there's probably a bunch of questions that have been piling up on the page. I haven't looked over there yet. But next, this was a question from Kenny, and I know he was trying to get me to respond, and I didn't. I was kind of at that time. There's certain questions I'd rather talk about than write about, just depending on what it is. And the question was about alcohol tinctures. Are alcohol tinctures good or bad, or what's my opinion on that? And sometimes it's like there's certain stuff that I don't like a politician that doesn't want to be on record, like I'm gonna get on record, because like I say, I like to talk about herbs privately with people, and I just because one day I'm going to talk about it publicly, or one day I'm going to release some writings, or I'm going to release something about it, and it's going to be different. It's going to be unlike anything that's out there right now. I mean, it's going to be different from Dr. Morris's approach. It's going to be different from anybody else that I've seen out there. It'll be highly influenced and based, in some of, Morris's methods, but there's going to be a lot. It's going to be different, and it's in my head, but it's like the early stages of a new understanding and a new way to think about and explain herbology. But I don't share things until it's time, until it's really ready. I started working on the stuff that's in Spira Speaks. I mean, I started writing that in 2005. And I, honed it, worked on it. And, the book didn't come out until, 2004, last year, 14, 13, when I started putting it all together and getting it finished, so I was working on something for years. A lot of people, they start trying to promote these diets and stuff. I mean, when I started writing, I'd already been into the diet, maybe 5 or 6 years. And then by the time, I worked on something like this for years. And even though I haven't practiced a diet for decades, I got at least got a decade, almost a decade and a half under my belt, but it took time. And so with my way of my approach with the herbal piece, it just takes time, because when you're putting something together that is going to shake up the entire reality of the way people think about something in a modality, you want it to be right. You don't want to half it, just like say whatever, just. So with that said, what I've seen is that the alcohol tincture, is benign, is relatively benign. And in my experience, it was fine. Like it got the herbs into the system relatively quick, and whatever. And I was real skeptical and early on myself, but I'm very much a researcher that researches on my own body. So I'm like, okay, well, let me check this out. So I tried the alcohol versions. I tried the vegetable glycerin. I tried making my own stuff. I tried, the capsule kind of thing. I tried powders, putting it in juices. I tried all those different realms. you know, at the same time, I've also can talk about the water fasting. I've done relatively long dry fasts. I've done very long juice fast. So I've like done everything. You know, I've kind of done as much as I can of all these different things, which enables me to be able to give some kind of perspective, as opposed to where some people just are, if they're only really dealt with one thing, then, you know, that's kind of all they can really refer to. You know, their world revolves around this one concept or this one experience, you know. But I've just been, and I don't tell other people that they have to do that, and because there's not a lot of people can't necessarily do that and not get off track. You know, I've been very careful to not get off track. You know, I don't want to, you don't want you, because it can be easy to get off track. And so you don't want to go, if you experimenting with something, you don't want to get, you know, go off the reservation. But, you know, so just basically that's my response to that. Like I said, I've not yet really wanted to talk publicly much about the whole herbal piece, because I have a new way that when I start talking about it, it's gonna be a new way to think about it and approach it, that's based on the mucusless diet, you know, that's based on a transition methodology and an arid methodology. And I'm in the process of honing that when I do work with people one-on-one that need that, you know, that need that level. And so far, my approach has been very successful with the people that I've personally worked with this, you know, sort of, I would call it a newer approach, because it is different from Dr. Morris to a certain degree. But anyway, I would say, you know, just check it out. Some people, you know, I know Dan McDonald, he tried he talked about the alcohol tinctures and didn't do too good with them, and so he doesn't do them. Of course, he does stuff that I wouldn't recommend doing when getting like the whole probiotic kind of piece, you know, and that kind of stuff. So I leave all that whole piece alone. I've already worked with too many people that have done like probiotic stuff, and they had like lost the ability to have natural bowel movements. And for as much as I've worked with people that do enemas all the time, that's not been the case with people that do enemas, you know, but especially if you do them properly. I always say what Eric talks about in the section called internal baths is you do an enema after you have a natural bowel movement. So you don't do the enema and rely on the enema for your natural bowel movements. If you're not having natural bowel movements, then wait. You know, don't do enema yet. Now it's different if you're fasting, but if you're eating and you're not having natural bowel movements, then wait till you have one, and then do your enema after that. And if you're going days and it ain't coming out, and then you got to get into your prunes and your prune juice, and eat prunes followed by the juicy fruit methodologies. You know, there's a lot that you can do within the context of Mucusless diet and these methods that we have. But you got to know first. You got to know about them. You know, so you got to really study the book and study experiences of people to know these things. But yeah, so you know, hopefully that helps. I know you was wanting the answer to that a while back, but you know, hopefully that kind of can get you to check into that. Again, it depends on your level of consciousness and how much of a purist you are. And that's why I'm not really on the record recommending any one thing, because if your level of consciousness is more on the level of is basically you have, okay, here's the different levels of consciousness when it comes to this. There's the brother air consciousness that just basically says the whole just scrap the whole herbal piece in turn. Not, and he doesn't necessarily say that. It's just he came up in a time, which it still goes on now, but it's particularly, you know, he talks about when he was watching the whole herbal piece develop back in the 70s and the 80s, where it was just a way for people to take advantage of other people and make money. So it was like, instead of taking Tylenol, just take this golden seal, or take this little herbal supplement. But it was never applied in a systematic way. It was just always like, oh, here, miracle drug kind of consciousness, or here, take this supplement, take that, take this, take that. And like he was saying, a lot of the same people that owned and operated the pharmaceutical companies were some of the same people that was making money off of the herbs. And so just that whole piece, it's just a certain level of consciousness. So with certain things, as Brother Air said, you put it in your salad, so there's certain kinds of herbs or things that have a certain positive kind of effect, then you can just eat them, So there's that level, but then you start getting into where you go down to the herb shop yourself and start experimenting with making your own formulas, and you can, you can powder them and do the whole powder piece, or you can take them straight, or you can sprinkle it on a salad. I mean, so there's these different things you can do. Then you start getting into the more processed stuff with the powders and the capsules and the and then even further is where you get into the tinctures, where you got the some kind of glycerin, the vegetable glycerin, the alcohol tank, and there's that level, so so I think any one of those spaces is something to explore, and so you don't. My thing is just not to be judgmental on any of those levels, because I think there's something on all those levels, but you have to, you just really have to know why you're doing something. That's why I ask people all the time when they're fasting, is they're like, well, I'm trying to do this fast. And it's like, well, why are you fasting? It's like, well, I don't know. I want to fast. I go, no, but why are you fasting? Like you got to have some kind of reason and a method to what you're doing. Because fasting in itself is dangerous if you're not preceding it properly, and you're not going to end it properly. And same with using herbs. If you're not using it right properly, first of all, you waste a lot of money. If you're just taking a bunch of herbs just because you think that's what this is healthy, or this is doing this or something, yet you're still eating a bunch of mucus forming foods, you're wasting your money, because herbs ain't gonna do nothing. And at the end of the day, the body, there is nothing external that actually is the thing responsible for healing the body. Some of these things can be used to help stimulate and eliminate, but that's it, because the body is what heals itself. And that's what Eric says. There is no magic herb, or there's no magic fruit, or nothing. There's no magic, nothing. You have fasting, and you have different levels of fasting. And when you get into your fruit levels, that becomes like levels of restricted diet that allows the body to cleanse and heal itself. So that's so I kind of leave that there. There was a question here. For those on a SAD diet, what is the first thing you would advise them to give up? Fish. I mean, meat and dairy is the first thing that you really want to get off of as soon as possible. I would say, the fish is something to scrap pretty quickly. Yeah, I mean, the meat is pretty high on there. The fine things to eat that can help you transition off of the meat, and the dairy. But there are there's a couple dairy options that Eric points out that can be used in the early stages of someone's transition, if someone's coming from a really bad diet and they need some pus, they kind of need something, there's like the cottage cheese kind of thing, the yogurt thing. nowadays you can find vegan versions of some of these things that can kind of maybe do some of the same stuff, or if you get like some kind of coconut milk based yogurt kind of thing, or whatever. But at the end of the day, though it's very short periods. I mean, I did use cottage cheese early on in my transition, but it was only for, I mean, it was maybe the first 1 or 2 months or something. But because I was doing the enemas, once I started doing the enemas, my system couldn't handle that anymore. My system couldn't handle the just that push, anymore. It was done. So every time I went back to it, I paid for it. My stomach would be it would just be, it's a terrible experience. I'll always remember the last time I ever ate a cheeseburger. Or of course, I couldn't ever just have a cheeseburger. I always had to have a bacon cheeseburger with extra cheese and a ton of mayonnaise on it, and ketchup and mustard, and all the fixings. But I had been without meat for the longest I'd ever gone at that point, which was maybe, it was like a couple months where I hadn't had any meat. And I had went out to eat with there was a famous jazz musician in town, and I was driving around with some of his musicians, and I took him, we had went out to eat, and I took him out to a restaurant that I liked, and in my head, and that's that addiction, in my head, I thought, I rationalized to myself, it's like, what, I could just, it's been a couple months and I'm transitioning, so I'm gonna just have a burger. And I paid for that. I'm still paying for that, man. That was one of the worst feelings that I ever had in my life. After having been meat free for about 2 months, then out of nowhere having a big burger. Because what's interesting, it's more than just physically painful. It's almost, it hurt my soul. Like emotionally, it hurt. Because not only did my stomach hurt, but it's kind of like there's a part of me that was starting to bloom, and then I ate that meat, and it's kind of like, it's like spraying some kind of weed killer or something on a plant, that's like kills the plant. It's just like, and it was even scary, because it's scary that I could still go back to that after having experienced a higher level of being in existence that was free of the tyranny of those foods. But it was part of my process. It was part of my relapse. It was part of my overcoming the addiction to pus. So, it was what it was. But, but I definitely, I'll never forget that. I just never forget the way I felt after having gone a period of time with no meat, and then just and again, social situation, in that social situation where I'm just like, oh, it's fine. Then all of a sudden I eat it, and it's like, I mean, it really, the only way I can describe it is there had been people like some people that have had different spiritual experiences, or like either like past life regressions, or if they've died, and like the people that don't go to the light, the people that start going down into the ground, into like a hell kind of consciousness, and where people that describe that experience, whether it's something that they make up in their head or if it's a real experience, I'm not here to judge that, but the way that they explain the way that process felt, the people whose consciousness went down into the innards of the earth. And there's this one, I got this video where someone describing their experience like that, and their concept of hell basically is, it's like being in a cave of people, and everybody is like self-absorbed into their own chaos, and they don't even notice that there's other people around. They're just it's like someone in an insane asylum that's just in their issues, in their drama, and totally self-absorbed and almost attached to it, in this person. Because in this particular video, this woman had tried to commit suicide, and this was her experience, where she had tried to commit suicide and she didn't die, but instead of like where people say, well, I'm going through a tunnel to the light, she went down into the earth, and in her consciousness, and had an experience of that is worse than anybody could ever describe to somebody. It makes those concepts of hell and these things that the Dante's Inferno, it like makes a lot of that stuff seem like basic, and not even that harsh, because the actual experience is like, it's worse than death, and I had, there's been a couple times on this path where I've experienced that, and it was, and I think each one of those times had pus involved in it, some kind of going back to pus, and once you've gotten off of it, going back is one of the most dangerous things you could probably do, just emotionally to yourself. It's like, it's physically, but emotionally, there's things that are happening, and there's stuff that you don't even realize is changing about yourself, that's transforming. And it happens so subtly that you don't even know it until you lose it. And that's, to me, that is the human lesson that we keep, is that we keep making that same mistake over and over again, as portrayed in some of these ancient stories of, having it all, feeling great, yet for whatever reason there's a flaw involved and we're not satisfied, and so we eat of the forbidden tree. And why? What does it take? How can we get our level of consciousness to the point where we no longer desire that which is unnatural, that which is unnecessary? I like the definition, in some spiritual circles, there's a definition of chaos that is called unnecessary process. So chaos is unnecessary process. So in life, eating mucus is unnecessary, and the effect of eating mucus therefore is unnecessary. Yet it creates the fundamental drama of so many people's lives. Cause and effect. Because we eat pus and mucus forming foods, the effect is a myriad of different ways to suffer, a myriad of different ways to die, a myriad of different ways to have loved ones console us and say, well, it's okay, there's nothing that you could have done. What if you take the pus and the mucus out of the equation? Now you're talking about a reality that has much less chaos, much less unnecessary process. And when we get too deep into that mucus realm, and especially after having experienced a reality that's chaos free, even if it's a little bit, you have these glimpses, especially if you're fasting, you can have these glimpses of a chaos free reality. And, say, I can see clearly now, the rain is gone, everything clears up, but for a moment. But those of us that's on this path, what we get real interested in is, how do we maintain that indefinitely? How can we earn that level and just stay there? Like, what do we have to do? Do we have to move and relocate somewhere? Do we have to transition slower? Do we have to transition faster? How do we have to balance? What do we have to do so that when we get to that level, we don't have to go back? See, and that's to answer, to go back to that transition question. That's my thing, is I'm not hard on myself. If I take a step back to some mucus forming foods or mucus lean or whatever, it's all in the context of my transition. But when I make certain steps forward, I never go back. Every time I make a real serious step forward, there's certain things I just never want to go back to certain things, and so that's the key, where I can look at that progress and say, okay, that's real progress. I'm never going back to such and such. Like, I feel it. And you never want to say never, because you never know, when something's going. So that's sometimes a level of pressure. You don't want to like put that on yourself. But if you feel it, like, I'm never going to go into a store and buy bleach to drink. I mean, you never say never, but I'm pretty confident that I'm not going to do that. That I'm not addicted to drinking bleach. So I'm not, like, I don't have to worry about going into the store and like walking through the bleach aisle and my, I start getting thirsty. Like, you're like, that bleach looks good, man. Hey, but I haven't had bleach in like 5 months. But I really want to drink that bleach. Like, that doesn't happen when you're truly not when you're done with your addiction, when you're beyond it. You wouldn't even think of these things. It's not in your reality no more. You wouldn't even, like, you're not going to be thinking about avocados. You're not going to be thinking about like nuts and seeds. I mean, when you're truly clean enough to the point where you get over these humps of addiction, you're not going to be like, oh man, I want, I mean, it's no longer a battle. And that's the way I like to practice the Mucusless diet. That's the way I like to transition. I don't want to fight. I want to do this thing gradually, so that every time I take a step forward, it's a permanent step, and I don't have to fall back because I'm trying to push myself too hard, and set myself up for defeat. Now, with that said, when the opportunity arises, the difference is, I never try to force myself into a fast, but I allow my body to direct me. So that if I'm doing all these other aspects of the transition diet, at some point, the body says, okay, you've done a good job. It's my turn. And then people call that healing crisis or elimination, whatever you call it. But what my technique was to be ready when my body did that. So whenever my body shifted over into an elimination mode, basically, I would be ready to say, okay, I'm fasting. It's on now. My body led me. My body told me to fast. And so now I'm ready to fast. So all of the long-term fasts that I've done, where I've done, like the 6-month-long juice fast and all that kind of stuff, they always started with my body with a healing crisis. My body going through a ton of elimination where it just didn't make any sense to eat anything. So I just drank, oftentimes I laid there, mucus was coming out, was going through it. And then instead of breaking the fast, when I was done, I just kept going because I felt good. Everything was lining up. and there's other things involved. There was some social stuff involved with the community, and Brother Air was fasting, and so there's a whole other science to this that needs to be explored in terms of group fasting and the kind of camaraderie, when you're doing something like that together with other people. There's kind of a magic to that. But yeah, so that's something to think about, is just how deep are you willing to go, and a lot of the deepness starts with a certain frame of mind and an attitude that you're going to do this thing regardless of all the obstacles, because it's social obstacles, emotional obstacles, life obstacles. It's part of this path, and it's what makes. It's what makes this path special, makes us special for choosing it, because it's unlike anything else that's out there. And a lot of the things are hard to talk about. As I hear people ask me sometimes, they say, well, why don't you talk about the good things that have happened to this and that, all the experiences and stuff. But what happens is, like, the best experiences, you do them a disservice by trying to put them in language, because there is no language to describe those experiences. And I do a little bit, musically, so I might do something like So I don't know how the level was on that, if you could hear any of that or not. But that expressed more of what I felt like than I could do in language. Language is too limiting. It's too limiting for the really immaculate experiences that are had, and those experiences, they keep you going, because when you get a glimpse of it, but then you have to go back and you have to pay more reparations, so you have to do more work before you can move forward again, but once you get a little taste of that, then you know it's there, and you know the work that you have to do to get to that, and that one day that you can sustain that. You get there, and that's going to be reality. And so with me, music is a way for me to express that, and for me to commune myself. Like that's for me, it's that music is meditation. Where the way that a lot of people use meditation to explore different realms of consciousness and the out of body travelings and the different things, breath, science of breath, and all that kind of stuff. I do that within the context of my musical studies and my music practice, and a lot of musicians do that, and that's why a lot of musicians that you find will have a certain vibe about them, because it takes a certain kind of dedication to really, and a kind of meditativeness, if I could just invent a word, to get to these various levels of artistry. And so the contemplation that it takes, the internal exploration in order to get in touch with these vibrations and to be able to put them out there, it's really it's a real unique, it's a unique thing, and an ability to be able to do that. So let's see here. Let's see what kind of questions we got going on here. And I know I would say we're running out of time. There's really no time limit, but I don't like to go on and on and on too terribly much. We've been at it for quite some time. So, but there's a lot of I got nine responses here. So let's work through a couple of these questions here that folks posted up. So we got Deb. This might sound weird, but my taste in music is changing, and it's going toward like country, which I seriously am wigged out about. LOL. Never old time country, and stuff like that. Hit also appreciating rare groove as well. Maybe it's more appreciative of music itself or artistic expression. I just am veering toward all sorts of things that are exciting but surprising. I'm thankful to have your book and guidance walking this path toward an entirely new experience of life. Thanks. And please sincerely thank David too for me. His soft-spoken energy really helps to soothe my soul and really assist me in keeping my mind in a place of focus. Peace to you and all who believe in the new way of living and appreciating life. Thank you, Deb. It's very, very nice post here. And yeah, we were just talking about the music and the art, and that kind of stuff. And for me, like I said, if I woke up tomorrow and everybody in the world understood the Mucusless diet, then I would stop talking about it. Like, cause that would be, okay, my mission is over. I can go back to just talking about nothing but music 24 hours a day. Cause I could sit here and talk just as long, if not longer, about music. But the thing about that is it's harder for me to stay basic. Like with the Mucusless diet, I can kind of stay basic. I don't feel the need to get real complicated or go off into these other kind of things. Like I do that privately or do that with people that can do that, that are able to have those kind of deeper conversations. Inspired by the Mucusless diet, but I'm able to kind of keep myself reined in here. But when I start getting into music, it's like it's on. We going off into some realms, and that was one thing when I taught music in a survey class. That was one complaint that some students had, was I was like too demanding with music theory and concepts that a lot of non-musicians don't know, and they would have to kind of learn it. to get it. But yeah, but I don't know. For me, the whole artistic approach to understand diet and just to understand life as an art form, as art, is as opposed to trying to be stuck in some sort of science concepts, because the science concepts are very limiting. But so yeah, so that's so okay. Here's Morris. What's your take on raw jackfruit? Is it considered to be mucus forming? I'm aware that many raw vegans use this as a meat substitute. I forgot to mention that jackfruit is available unripe in stores like Whole Foods, and the raw vegan community uses it unripe as a meat substitute. So unripe, yeah, I mean, I would consider it to be quite acid forming and not, not good unripened. I mean, it has a little bit of fat content. It's nowhere near like the fat content of an avocado, but it does have a little bit of, a small amount of fat content in it. I'm not super, like, I don't eat it myself, and I've only had it a couple times, so I'm not like really studied on it, but I mean it eliminates relatively well, but so that would be a thing though. I would ask you guys, what do y'all think in terms of when you eat it? How does it eliminate? Now, when you're talking about the unripe version, I'd be like, no, I'd put an X on that immediately. Like I said, it doesn't have a whole lot of fat in it, but I tend to stay away from the fruits that have any fat content at all. But so yeah, so I would say in terms of the trend, like it's not a fruit that I would eat if I was gonna call myself mucusless at the moment. Like if I was gonna do a mucusless fruit fast period, that's not something that I would include. Just I would be eating stuff like grapes, melons, blackberries, things that are unquestionably, there's no question, that's mucusless. There's no question about those kind of things. When you start getting into some of these other things, some stuff, even like ripe bananas, that's good for when you're in an eating mode, but it's not good for detoxification mode, and fasting mode. And so basically you want to find, again, like I asked before, why are you eating it? So if you like jackfruit, why are you eating it? And if you got a good answer, because I can always do that. Everything I'm eating, I can ask that question, why am I eating it? And I can give an answer for it. If I was just eating the cherries earlier, and then I said, well, why am I eating the cherries? It's like, well, I mean, yeah, they taste decent, but more importantly, they eliminate well. They help loosen up some waste. They don't leave behind slime. And I'm in a condition right now physiologically where my body needs help eliminating waste. It can't do it just with air alone. So I need to have some fruit. I need to have some vegetables. I'm not beyond that. So I hope that helps. I mean, I would need to do a little bit more research on jackfruit myself, just because I'm not overly, it's not something that I eat a lot or have eaten a whole lot. But overall, I would think it's not as bad as something like like avocado kind of thing. It has much less fat content than that, but I would say that it should definitely be eaten as it should definitely be eaten ripe. And I'm not a fan of that concept of meat substitute. If you're a vegan, if you're a real vegan, you don't need a substitute for meat, because you're done with that. You're done with that whole realm of reality, so you had to reinvent a whole eating concept, when you're still trying to say, well, I'm vegan, but this is what I eat instead of meat. I mean, I just have a problem with that whole way of thinking. That's like, well, that's just not elevated enough to me. It was like, you gotta reinvent a plant-based reality that is, if anything, the plant-based reality predates meat eating. So, so I mean, it just doesn't go. I mean, if you want to talk about something in transitional, just in kind of transition context, that's one thing, but that's rare. I rarely see that when people are talking about, like the soy burgers and the different things that people use to try to replicate, if they're trying to like fry up or grill mushrooms and try to act like it's a steak and all this kind of stuff. It's like, there's not enough transition mentality in that with most people that I see that think like that. Like they want to eat like that forever, and they don't find any fault with that, and so, but with me as a diet practitioner, our standards are a little higher and our aspirations are higher. And so it's not that we would never eat like that. It's just that we're not going to be satisfied eating like that for very long. We're going to want to push ourselves, beyond that realm. And we say is unripe jackfruit mucusless. I would say not. It is commonly used as a meat substitute. Okay, that's a say. Okay, that question is asked a couple times. Okay, just got a couple more questions here. Hi, all. I don't know how to start. I'm 100% fruitarian raw. Now following the healing system, my question is, what does it mean the transition can last forever? Should one step ahead to a better diet? I know that the transition, how long it lasts, depends on the individual, but I'm a little confused. Thank you for the clarification. So again, I could describe this in two different contexts. One would be the context of an artist, which I already talked about before, where as an artist, you're in the driver's seat of how fast you develop. Some people, it's very rare when somebody is gifted to the point where they could be like a Mozart or like a Herbie Hancock and be, 5 or 6 years old and already playing masterpieces on the piano. That's rare, when you have that type of, I would call that like a physiological genius, someone that just is so advanced so early on, but that's rare. And oftentimes those folks, because they have that in the beginning, they almost take it for granted, so they, not all of them, but I've just seen some people where because they didn't have to really work and earn in the same way that other people have to really scrape and earn these higher levels of physiological excellence. It's, they kind of have a different attitude about it, and they have a different way of being, and you see that with prodigies, young people that are, under 10 years old that really develop these high levels of things in these different realms. But for everybody else, that's, if you're not a prodigy and you're just like, man, okay, I'm trying to get myself together, it's up to you. But the key is looking at yourself in the mirror and being honest with yourself about where you are physiologically. And in order to do that, you really got to study the Mucusless Diet book. You study some of the things that we've been talking about to put things into perspective. But, you really have to be honest with yourself. Now, the other context, that I could get, that a lot of people are familiar with, is going to be the working out context, because it seems like those are like the two community. You have the artist side, and then you have the people that are really heavy into the, running marathons and working out and that kind of thing. And from that standpoint, don't you have to transition? And at what point does any bodybuilder or does any marathon person say that they're satisfied with where they're at? Or are they always wanting to get better? Are they always wanting to be able to run faster and farther than they did? Even if they are the fastest man or woman in the world, is it not so that they woke up the next day and they went out and they worked out and they tried to go faster and do better than they did the day before? So when people have this concept of, like, that say, well, why would the transition last forever? But if you think about it in terms like that, at what point does, like, these people that do the long bike rides, when are they satisfied? When do they give up and say, you know what, I've mastered this, I'm done, I can ride my bike fast, I can do it across the country, I never have to ride my bike again, I'm done? Or people that say, well, I don't have to lift, I've deadlifted 400 pounds, that's what I aspired to, I've done it, I'm done lifting, I'm great, I don't have to lift anymore, I'm done. But that's the attitude that a lot of people have for some reason when it comes to the diet. They want to know, when am I done? When have I reached the pinnacle? When can I say I'm no longer transitioning and I am the superstar? I'm there, I've made it, I'm self-realized, I'm a master. When people want that, yet that's not, to me, that's not the way to think about that. When we say it could last forever, transition, we don't know what's beyond some of these higher levels. I mean, there's theories. When we get a little deeper into discussions, we can get into the fruitarian, and then you get into the elusive breatharian concepts, and then we move into the light-atarian and the light travelers and the black hole beings and the universe, Milky Way hosts. I mean, there's some way out there stuff that we could talk about one day, but right now what we're dealing with is what we're dealing with, so we can think way outside the box, but right now we're dealing with salads, fruits, fasting. It's the tools that we have, colon irrigation. So in the practical sense, it's enough to know, like an artist. Most artists, they don't have a limit in their head. Like, it's not like, okay, I want to play like Charlie Parker, or I want to play like Coltrane, and once I achieve that, I'm done. I'll be a self-realized master as soon as I get that. That's not how they think. They study John Coltrane, they study Charlie Parker, they study all the great musicians, but they want to create their own thing musically. They want to excel and develop their own expression and continually get better. And watch some interviews of, like, a Sonny Rollins who's in his 80s, or a Charles Lloyd who actually practiced the diet for years in the past, and dedicated a song to Arnold Ehret. You look him up, Charles Lloyd. But look at some of their interviews later in life. They got the same attitude about practicing, getting up in the morning and practicing their instrument for hours on end. They're already considered some of the greatest musicians that have ever lived, at the highest level of mastery, and have all the accolades and the the presidential seal of every award that you could get, and yet they still get up and they practice their instrument just like they were 12 years old learning how to play it. They still have that mentality. They still have that passion. They still have that, I want to get better. There's more refinement available. And within this realm, there's so much refinement that's possible. And we are the pioneers to check it out. But we can't have a limiting concept of like, okay, there's like some goal, like, okay, once I get over this certain goal, then I'm done, then I've achieved what I wanted to achieve. That's the difference. That's the difference in mentality of when we say it's a lifelong kind of thing. Most people that are real dedicated to the exercise concepts, they're not, you don't hear them saying, once I bench press 500 pounds, then I quit. Like, I'm done. Like, I'll consider myself a master. I can sit with my legs crossed and have other, I can be a guru and have other people worship me, but I don't have to lift anymore, or whatever. I mean, that they don't have that mentality. So we can't have that with the diet, where we try to construct some kind of goal, as if like there's some goal that is the ultimate goal, because from what the little bit of wisdom that I have and the little bit that I've seen into the future is there's always another level. There's always another level. Once you get to this level, then there's always another level. There's something higher. There's something more refined. But sometimes in order to be able to conceive of the next level, the thing that's more refined, you have to get to that. Like, you have to get to a higher level than where you're at right now. So that's kind of my thinking on that. Okay, here's the last question that we will answer for today. This is Andy. If it smells like fish, well, okay, yeah. This is the question that I asked, where I said, somebody explain why fish is the worst meat to eat. So he says, plain and simple, fish don't breathe oxygen, and every time we breathe in, we are cleansing our system some. Fish is one of the most mucus-packed meats available. If you think about it, our society can't even figure out a way to regulate fish production, as there is no organic or certification for organic fish. You will find organic beef, chicken, turkey, but never will you find a fish or marine life that is certified or labeled organic. But somehow fish is still considered one of the healthiest meats on the market. I quote, I eat mostly vegan. I just eat a little chicken and fish occasionally, unquote. Ha ha. Yeah, I hear it too much. And we think fish is so healthy that we've taken fish and concentrated it into a swallowable tablet called fish oil. People sometimes. Yeah, indeed. People sometimes. Yeah, but yeah, you hit it. That is right on. Fish don't breathe. Fish don't breathe oxygen. And so a being that breathes oxygen is fundamentally going to be cleaner than a being that doesn't, that tries to absorb oxygen, through gills. And so that's right on. So I think we're gonna wrap it up for this installment, and As always, it's a privilege and a pleasure to talk to you, and especially those of you that are still listening, after hours of hearing me ramble on. I really, really appreciate you guys. I mean, I do this for you. And I hope that it inspires folks to just take things to the next level, whatever that means for you. Whatever you're into, whatever you're working on physiologically, spiritually, uh, your family life, your work, whatever it is you're doing. I want you to be successful. I want you to find a way to make Mucusless Diet be successful in your life. And there's always a way, that becomes an attitude of unshakable determination, where it doesn't matter whatever happens, I'm gonna do this thing. Because like I said, sometimes you go through periods of elimination where you're gonna be tired, you're gonna be fatigued, you're gonna be needing to lay down and just rest, take a chill. I say take a chill pill. Take a chill grape, and just chill. And it's hard for a lot of us because we're so used to being rambunctious and being just overstimulated, and gotta do this, gotta run, gotta do this, gotta run, and then as soon as you have to lay down and just chill, you're like, oh, I'm depressed and this, and it's like, man, just take the opportunity to go inside and get to know get to know who you really are. When you're out in the world and there's all these different distractions, you don't often have the opportunity to really go internally and get to know who you really are. And Mucusless Diet and fasting affords you opportunity to do that in a very unique way. And there's other modalities that also have that as a goal, or as something that you work toward, whether if it's different meditation and yoga type of disciplines and things like that. But the Mucusless Diet has a very real and effective path for that kind of the unfolding of one's consciousness, the unfolding of one's spiritual acumen. As rational fasting title says, for physical, mental, and spiritual rejuvenation. So it's all part of this, the holistic, the mind, body, spirit, the whole thing. That this is, it's always been a part of the whole thing. It's just certain parts of it are easier to talk about than others. It's hard sometimes to talk about spiritual experiences, or what people call spiritual, because they're very, they mean a lot to you, and there's something that oftentimes you just can't articulate to others. But what I've see happen is when you do have those experiences, if you really have had those experiences, you don't have to talk about them, because people can feel it when they're in your presence. They can feel it. So you don't have to say anything about it. They can feel when you dig down into some of these levels, then when you come into contact with other people, they feel that. They feel that you've gone somewhere inside yourself, and they can't explain it. They don't know why they feel a certain way around you, but they know, they feel something. And so you emit that energy. So you get to a point where you don't have to talk about stuff a lot. You just basically, when you go out in public, you are that. You are what you eat. You are what you contemplate and think about. And if you are eating produce and being productive, then you're going to be thinking clearly, thinking productively, as opposed to in, mucus land. Look at the kind of thought patterns that mucus land creates. Pure chaos, pure unnecessary unnecessary process, just pure chaos. And that's what we got. Turn on the news, turn on Facebook news feeds, just chaos, just up and down. It's just pure insanity. And it unfolds right in front of your eyes, and you can see it. And when you look at the basis of it in pus and mucus reality, then you basically can really understand why things are so bad. That was always a question that growing up that I wanted to know, like why are things so terrible in the world, in turn, why is there so much human suffering? And Arnold Ehret and Mucusless Diet really gave me the answers that I wanted, that let me know, like, okay, this is why things are so insane. And so yeah, let's see. I'm actually checking the YouTube page to see if there's any questions up here. Yeah, Care Bears and jazz hands. Yeah. Okay, fish rots the fish. So somebody answered the fish question on the actual YouTube page. Serious Neo, fish rots the fastest ? Would make would make you smell. LOL. If it comes from the ocean, it contains mercury or pollution from man. So yeah, I mean all of the above, but definitely the concentrated pus is like just so devastating to the human organism. Fish filter water, not air. Water concentrates more toxins, and these end up accumulating in the tissues of the aquatic organisms. Yeah. I mean, just anytime you're thinking in terms of the concentrated, I mean, pus. If I look at pus itself as a toxin, just a toxic, something that's toxic. I mean, pus is one of the most toxic things that we can put in our body, and then it only gets more and more concentrated internally, inside the body. Let's see. So many people I know say I only eat fish sometimes, and it's like, why? LOL. They smell so bad, and they're so much nicer left alone in the water than killed and cooked, just so that we can consume their stored toxins for stimulation. Yeah, I agree. Fish don't breathe. They don't filter their toxins throughout their breathing, and they are in a very toxic environment. Yes, indeed. So yeah. So I appreciate all you guys tuning in and enjoying the video and liking the video. Let's see. Let me go back to the thing here. So, well, this has been fun. It's always a pleasure to reach out and talk to you guys. And I know sometimes my tempo, like we were talking about before, I'll have a period where I kind of put out a bunch of stuff, and then you might not see me for a minute, then I come back, but when I come, I try to come with the quality and the content so that there's enough there where like a video, like you could be watching a video like this for some people watch it all at one time. Some people might split it up into the half-hour segments and watch it over the course of a week or something, but either way, I try to get into these real substantive discussions because I notice that people appreciate them, and as long as people get something out of them and enjoy them and like them, then I will do them, and because I enjoy doing them. I grew up. It was always I was one of them kids that, again, because I had to create my own world for myself because I didn't have a whole lot of people to play with. And one of the things that I did was I had a Fisher Price tape recorder, and I used to make my own little radio shows. I had my little recorder, and I would and I still got some of those old shows too, where I'm just talking. I'm just I'm just making things up and saying stuff, but it sounds like a real show though. But so I always had that kind of thing in my head of just communicating out, and just being able to express myself to people. And I'm glad that I've been able to do it and have folks that's just interested in what I have to say. So again, from the bottom of my heart, I thank you all for tuning in. And so give me some feedback. Let me know stuff, different things you're thinking about, and from the discussion today. And if you got questions, we'll deal with that the next time. And of course, the quick plug, if you haven't gotten the books yet, Annotated Mucusless Diet Healing System is a must-have for everybody. Everybody that calls themselves conscious or plant-based or anything should at least have it, even if you don't practice it. Like, you don't consider yourself a mucusless diet practitioner. Like, that's just a book. You're just supposed to have that in your collection, just to be like, well, I'm hip. I got, of course I know who Arnold Ehret is, and I got the Mucusless Diet. It's just what is the cool thing. It's cool kids. The cool kid table is everybody's got the Mucusless Diet. Then Spira Speaks. You'll be hearing some more stuff from me about this. I'm going to be doing a free download giveaway for this soon for anybody that's willing to go on Amazon and write up a review for me. I haven't done that yet, so we'll be doing that shortly, probably later this month. So, stay tuned for that. And so other than that, everything's going good. Again, final time, I want to thank all of you for, just being, being who you are, being real serious about trying to get yourself together and interested, open-minded. And, so until next time, peace, love, and breath.